Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting Monday, November 23rd, 2020. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on December 6, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on December 6, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on December 6, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. On October 5th, 2020, a notice was sent to both the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger that this meeting would be held remotely using communication equipment via Zoom due to COVID-19 restrictions. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching their decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. And just a little housekeeping for members of the public and applicants and their professional teams. As your case is called, we will ask you who is on the Zoom call for testifying, and we will bring them into the meeting. For members of the public, when the chairman opens the hearing up for members of the public to ask questions or comments on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature, and you will be brought into the meeting one at a time. You will also need to be on audio and video, and you will need to be sworn in. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes.
Here.
Mr. Mertens.
Here.
Mr. Moretti.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
Here.
Mr. Orozco has been excused. Mr. Saya.
Here.
Mr. Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
And Chairman Nansen.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of
the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Tropoli, you mind swearing in the professionals, please?
Not at all. Would the professionals please stand, raise your right hand. I swear the testimony you'll give this evening be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
The record should reflect tonight we have Mr. Cunliffe, Ms. Spiro, Mr. Howard, and Ms. Bell, all sworn. Thank you.
Thank you. Any minutes?
I have no minutes this evening.
Vouchers?
I have no vouchers this evening.
Correspondence?
I have no correspondence, but I just want to let everyone know that I did text everyone today, and the Rules Committee meeting is going to be held on December 7th, 2020 at 5:30. It'll be just before our December 7th meeting. We hope to be done within the hour, and you can break for dinner break or whatever. And we'll send you out the links for that meeting as it gets a little closer. So
Okay.
that has been confirmed for December 7th.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all I have for that.
Okay, no resolutions.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna kind of change up the order here because I kind of want Jennifer here for the Sakuda application. She will be on joining us in a little bit. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take case number BA 20112, Jose Arturo Sola Hernandez, bulk variance in for 15 pillars in the front yard. Application of Jose Arturo Solo Hernandez as applicant and owner seeking bulk variance approval to keep and continue construction 15 3-foot by 3.5-foot long by 3 feet high pillars within the Oakland road frontage yard area on premises known as Block 38, Lot 18, 698 Oakland Road. Expiration date December 17th, 2020. Okay, Mr. Gonzalez, or Hernandez, Mr. Hernandez. You-
Hello, you can talk now.
Yes, Mr. Hernandez.
They talking, they calling your name. Say hi.
Hi,
Hi, okay. Is this Demetria Roman or you're Mr. Hernandez?
yeah, I'm Hernandez. This is the meeting.
Okay, okay. Mr. Tropley, you want to swear Mr. Hernandez in, or how many witnesses do you have?
How many witnesses?
I don't know.
Who's going to testify?
What is that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to establish whether or not we have an
Interpreter.
interpretation issue here, because if someone is going to testify.
What you guys want talking about? Who's going to testify what?
Who's, okay,
Right.
Mr. Tropley?
Sure. Ma'am, let me just explain one thing. The applicant, whoever is bringing the case before the zoning board, has to show proof and has to discuss with the board what is happening. And I, as the attorney, want to make sure that the applicant is ready to go ahead with his case. And when we say witnesses, it could be Mr. Sola Hernandez to testify as to what it is he wishes to do. The board would have the opportunity to question him, and so forth and so on. But I want to make sure that whoever's going to testify is comfortable in the English language and they can explain what it is that they're doing.
Say it now. You want to testify?
And if he can't do that tonight, then he probably should either bring an interpreter, because we don't have interpretation ability here. So if you want to explain that to
That's me.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's me. That's it. I'll do it.
you can do it? Do you understand everything that I've said so far?
I think.
Well, I want to make sure that you are very clear. Mr. Chair, look, I'm a trial attorney. I do a lot of work in courts. Just want to be sure that there's a two-way communication, that everybody understands what's happening. Do you feel comfortable, Mr. Solis Hernandez, to talk about what it is you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's try. First of all, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand. Okay, you swear the testimony you'll give will be the truth tonight?
Yes.
Correct? Okay, state your full name, sir.
Say it for me. Jose
Your
Sola.
name.
Jose Sola Hernandez.
Okay, now can you in your own words, can you tell the board what you're trying to do this evening with this application?
Okay. About the
Pillars.
about the pillars.
About the pillar, tell the board what you want to do with the pillars, sir.
So the thing I built the pillars in front of my house. I want to get the property look nice. That's the reason I built it.
Okay, did you build the pillars yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, how many pillars do you have?
16.
16?
Yeah.
And can you tell the board how you're going to finish the pillars, what you want to do, how you're going to make them?
You almost finished. It's like couple left. I had to put like couple stones around it, and to get put a concrete, and that's it. This is gonna be.
Ron, un momento, por favor. Ron, is it okay if Mr. Gonzalez could step in too with this? I think he might be fluent in the Spanish language.
You mean our Mr.
Mr. Nansen, I would definitely help out, but I'm not 100% comfortable in doing that with.
Okay.
And remember also, Mr. Nansen, I believe, unfortunately or fortunately, the proceedings have to be so that the public is able to understand as well.
Right.
And unless we have a certified interpreter,
Okay.
I would have
That's why I
some
was
concern.
asking.
Right. That
Because the thing of it is, I'm gonna bring Mr. Howard in on this because this is a code case. And there's issues involved here that I don't think that this board has the authority to grant relief for. Mainly all of it. There are certain variances, but Mr. Hernandez has some other avenues to go here. But you know, I'm going to bring Mr. Howard in, and he can kind of explain a little bit to the board, so we can decide if we need to move forward or we need to do something else here. Okay, Mr. Howard?
Sure. So this was a code enforcement case. We found construction started without permits. Ultimately, the picture I put up is a picture from the site. So when we talk about pillars, this is what was constructed. It's a partial construction. It was not completed. The applicant stood down the second we let him know we had an issue. From my perspective, and my code enforcement officer's perspective, this is a structure in the front yard. We normally see this in the form of fencing, where you'll have the fence posts be 4 or 6 foot tall pillars. This, I'll let the applicant explain. It looks more like a landscaping feature, which will eventually have plants growing in between it. But ultimately, it's still a structure by the definition in our ordinance. It is a structure. It is in the front yard. So it's flagged that it would need a bulk variance. Ultimately, what you see is what it is. There's not much else proposed, I don't think. I'll let the applicant speak about that. And the relief sought here is for a structure in the front yard.
Matt, what about being in the easement?
So I think there's a question, and Charlie can maybe fill in on this a little bit. I think the location is a little too far forward. I believe it is in the right of way. That's definitely something that needs to be addressed because this board doesn't have the permission to grant anything in the right of way. That's the township's responsibility to maintain. Charlie, can you give any information on that?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, at the end of my letter, I want to say it's the last 6 or 7 sheets, I took some various photographs when I visited the site to prepare my letter. It looks like the pillars, as Mr. Solis Hernandez indicated, about half of them have been like constructed. There's 5 courses of block. They're approximately 3 feet by 3.5 feet by 3 foot high. His intention, it looks like, to finish them with a paver veneer. It also looks like inside the center of these pillars, there's an area where for a possible future planting bed for flowers or plants. There also looks like there's an irrigation line stubbed up through each one of these pillars. As Matt alluded, if you can scroll forward, Matt, I took a picture looking down the property line, this one right here. So on my site visit, it looked like, I don't know if the applicant had it done, had the front property line staked out. If you can see right in the center of the picture, there's like a yellow or a pink or orange flag there. That, from what I paced out from the roadway and looking at the neighbor's pillar on the neighbor's property, that looks like that's where the property line is. So each one of these pillars is approximately 1.5 to 2 foot into the right of way. So obviously the board can't grant a variance for a structure to be in the township right of way. What they can consider is granting relief for an accessory structure to be in a front yard, but we can't grant relief from it being in the township right of way. That's something that I think the governing body would have to grant an approval to. My recommendation to the board would be is if the board doesn't take an issue with these structures being in the front yard area, possibly granting relief for the structure to be in the front yard and defer it to a condition of the approval that the applicant must petition the governing body for approval for those to remain in the right of way. What I would say is, I don't know how the governing body is going to look on that. If a car were to go off the edge of the road and hit that in the right of way, it's in the township's property and the township approved it. I don't know if that's any issues for the township from a liability perspective. Should the board not permit those structures to remain in the right of way so that the applicant doesn't have to come back to the board I think the board should also consider granting relief for it, either a 0-foot setback, 1-foot setback, 2 or 3 foot yard setback. So if the applicant does have to move it, they don't need to come back to the board. It's already in the resolution and they can handle that with closing out their permits with the construction office. That would be my recommendation to the board. The only question I would have for the applicant and regarding the construction is it on a permanent foundation? Is it on, like a gravel pad? Can you provide any testimony as to the foundation for it?
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Our engineer was asking what type of foundation is it built on?
I use concrete.
Did you have like rebar reinforcement coming up from the foundation into these blocks, or are they just resting on the concrete pad itself?
And the bottom, I put it about 18, like 2 feet concrete and couple rebars in the bottom. That's what I build it. Okay.
Yeah. So really, it's not so simple as just lifting up the structure and moving it. It sounds like there's a little bit more work involved in it, but my recommendation is, like I said, we can grant approval for it to be in the front yard. We can grant a 0-yard setback or a 1-foot setback from the front property line. It being in the right of way is something that, the governing body would have to approve or weigh in on. So that's, I think, where I would leave it for the board to discuss it from here.
And Matt, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think Charlie did a good job. This is fairly common. Usually it is with the fence posts, like I spoke about. There's talk about looking at these types of structures and what we want to do with them in the front yard, because especially it's an aesthetic feature. That's really all it is it's meant to make the property look nice. So we understand that we might have to look at some ordinance for this. I just do want to pose one question to the applicant. I know it sounds like they're pretty robust structures, but is it possible to move them back a couple feet? I think going to the governing body, while it's definitely an option, just might not be the easiest process. So I just want to see if there's any possibility of relocation.
No.
No.
Actually, moving back is like rip it up, everything. It look like nothing.
So I just want you to understand that if the governing body were to deny your request to occupy the right-of-way, that you would have to remove them completely. Are you okay with that?
It costs more a lot of money to build it back.
Yeah, but this will cost a lot of money to build it back. So a lot of money. He's not talking about like $500. He's talking like
a few thousand, a lot of thousands.
27,000 probably.
Matt, I have a question for you.
Sure.
And I've heard what Charlie has said, and we're trying to work with the applicant, and I would like to see some relief granted, but are we in fact spinning our wheels if the board were to even grant front yard setback relief now without hearing from the township? I mean, should he go to the township first and see what their sentiment is? Because it's going to be a non-starter if they say no. Unless I'm missing something here.
Well, the front yard setback, if this was completely within the front yard setback, we wouldn't need the governing body at all.
I understand that, but it's in the right of way. But if they say no, then the structures have to come out.
Right, or be relocated. So I would think if the governing body were to deny that request, then I think the variance can still stand with a 0 or 1 foot setback. It would then be the applicant's responsibility to relocate or remove to be in compliance with the governing body's decision.
No, I understand that part. I'm just sensing some reluctance to move it at all, regardless, of what this board may or may not do.
Well, I agree that going to the governing body is the first step. I don't know if we necessarily want to make the applicant come back if we can avoid it.
I think that, really, Mr. Chair, it's just something that as I'm sitting here listening to the conversation, it's just something I think for the board to consider. Again, understanding that Charlie you know, that assuming the board is even looking favorably upon this, the board could grant the relief subject to the right-of-way approval. And if it's denied, then the resolution would provide that he'll have to remove them from the right-of-way and make them conforming, which could cause an enforcement issue again if he doesn't do that. But I suppose that's the issue. In other words, to rule upon it this evening, the way it is, granting, as Charlie had suggested, a 0 setback, or deferring it to the governing body. It's just something I think the board needs to kick around.
Yeah, well, Mr. Sam,
Yes. Yeah. You say, Mrs. Soto?
Paul, you're muted.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay,
So, you know, there's two issues here is what we're looking at. Matt, Mr. Tropoli, Charlie, you all laid it out pretty clear. You know, we're in the right of way with a solid structure. Therefore, you know, that has to be remediated before anything else happens. My question to you, Charlie, is these structures be lifted with a crane and relocated, or are they attached to such underneath where they cannot be removed, or does it have to be cut off? How much work in addition to getting underneath and strapping these things, lifting them up and moving them 3 feet, is it going to take? Over.
You know, I mean, I think anything could potentially be done with the, you know, the means and the equipment, but it's not a small task based on what, you know, Mr. Hernandez indicated. If it's got 2 feet of concrete underneath it with rebar coming up and the wall itself is, you know, poured or set into the concrete, you almost got to move the whole entire thing or remove the foot. You know, you're talking about taking down the wall, you know, ripping out the foundation, putting a new foundation back in and setting it in the correct spot to try to move the thing as one whole entire structure. You know, I don't know how you could do that and get it level to grade and in the exact location that you want it.
well, you're also talking about 2 tons of 2 to 3 tons there to move.
They're also talking about 12, so the cost must be astronomical.
Yeah.
You know, you're not talking like 1 or 2 items. You're talking about 12 of them have to be moved.
Yep.
That's a lot of money.
Well, we can't grant relief from the right of way. So
No.
where do we go from here? And that Matt, Mr. Tropoli, you know, Chairman Nansen,
Yes, sir.
we're gonna have to make a call on this. Over.
Well, I think we could grant the front yard relief, but it's up to the applicant to go, you know, to further, you know, the process with the council and or land use to figure out, you know, if they have to move them. You know, if we grant relief, then they don't have to come back to the board, you know, for the front yard structures. They wouldn't have to come back to us. You know, they just go do the township, and then based on whatever the township says, if they give them, you know, if they say no, they could leave them in the right of way, you know, then they don't have to come back to us. But, you know, if we don't act on the front yard setback for the structures in the front yard, if we don't act on that, then they'll have to come back to us no matter what. So, you know, that's what I want to leave it up to discussion for the board is, you know, do we grant the structure variance, you know, being in the front yard, and then let them deal with the council or land use, you know, from that point on, it's totally up to the council and land use. And if they have to move this, if they have to move those structures back, you know, they already have the relief. So, you know, I'm gonna go one by one down the board. And Mr. Hernandez, do you understand what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mertens,
I agree 100% with you, Mr. Chairman and Charlie. These things we should decide on tonight, whether we permit them in the proper location and let the council decide the right of way.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Well, I feel that it's a unfortunate situation that a permit wasn't applied for, so this wouldn't happen in the first place. Second, if it goes to the council, I would want to know if the council would still, if they grant it, if the township is still liable in case somebody goes off the road, like Charlie says. Is this going to be a double lawsuit against the town and the applicant? And if we allow them to stay, it's the same thing. I mean, can we make an addendum to say that, we're not responsible? He was accepting all responsibility, but that's for Mr. Tropoli to decide, because I'm mixed on it.
Well, see, that would be up to the council, to
Right, but, they have to be told to do that.
Well,
Because,
that
it would have to
that's
go back to them, because if they grant the relief and say, let it stay, and 2 weeks later, something happens, who gets sued?
Well, Mr. Howard would be there, directing the council. So, that would be, I think the council would bring that up as far as the liability issues.
Well, if you want to give the applicant the benefit of the doubt, then let them go to the council and see what the council says. And if there's anything that they could do legally that doesn't harm the council or our board, I think that's the right way to go, because I'm not going to vote to leave it where it is and then have trouble down the road.
We're not voting to leave it where
No,
it's
I know that, but I'm just saying, I'd have to abstain, like, take it to the council.
Mr. Chairman, before you poll the other members, I want to ask Matt a question.
Go right ahead.
Matt, we've had a similar situation, maybe not directly parallel to this, on Salem Hill Road when you're coming in on the northbound side of 9 and you make the right turn in on the corner lot. Is there any similarity to this? And how did we resolve that issue, if it's been resolved at all, or is it still an outstanding issue? Over.
So I know the site you're talking about. I can't speak to that one specifically because of my time here. That hasn't come up. I do know that there's pillars that look like they once acted as a fence and the fence isn't there. I've never looked into how that happened. I can tell you that we've had similar applications for just fencing. I keep bringing that up. That is the most common way of these 6-foot tall pillars with the fencing connected. And that's always been denied for this reason, that it's a bulk variance. Encroachments into the right of way, that's something unique. I can't even say that under these circumstances, the governing body in my time has seen something like that. So it's hard to know what their thought process is. I have to think liability is the main question, the main issue, and that might be what it comes down to. But the other fencing pillars, the decorative features, we have tried to control by requiring at least a variance.
Roger, thank you.
Matt, if I could just clarify, so say these pillars were just inside the property line and they had panels connecting them, they
still
would
require variance
for being in the front yard setback.
A fence is fine, but once that pillar, which is a conglomeration of materials to make an overall structure,
Okay.
that's what the definition is. That's when it would be triggering a variance.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So to me, if we're going to consider this tonight, we got to kind of look at it. I mean, these are obviously in the right of way. So I think I would approach it looking at it like they're not there because we can't approve them. And the applicant is then applying to be able to do this, the way it honestly should have been done. So my question, I guess, is, Charlie, do we have all the proper papers and documentation and all to be able to look at it as a fresh thing?
So I'm going off of my site visit of the application, taking some measurements off the existing roadway, scaling off the survey that was provided. Obviously, what was presented to the board was a survey with a hand-drawn sketch of the location of the pillar. So, my looking at the stakes that are out there, that seems to me that that's the indication of where the front property line is. you know, could the applicant go and get an updated as-built survey of these pillars? And could they perhaps not be in the right of way? You know, that's an option, but, you know, then it's another added expense for the applicant to find out that they are in fact in the right of way. So, you know.
Well, no, I think more my question is, if these pillars didn't exist right now and this gentleman was coming to us to do this project before he, you know, broke ground on it, do you have the documentation for us to make a decision if it was drawn out?
How we would typically handle that is we'd say the applicant is granted for the pillars to be in the front yard area with a 0-foot setback, and we'd require them to submit an as-built survey prior to the completion of it to be, you know, verify the location as per described to the board. And then if at the result of that, if it was 2 foot into the right of way, they'd be coming back to the board asking for relief of the same thing. And then, you know, we'd be having the same discussion we're having right now.
Okay. So then all right, I got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Mr. Cantor.
Mr. Chairman, all the regulations aside at the beginning, which is tough to say, I am disinclined to punish or rule against a resident who's putting up, who spent obviously hours and money to make this improvement of beautification on his property. They are structures, yes, but then I'm looking around the neighborhood at neighbors that put up similar huge cement mailboxes right on the front curb. We could probably point to hundreds of cement or firm structures that have been put up by residents. And this resident obviously spent his time, his money, and his effort to beautify his property. That being said, would the council, if we were to rule favorably on what we do, would the council then be influenced by our decision in making their decision to grant access to the right of way? You know, does our action then influence their decision?
I would think, just to answer that, I would think not, but it's ultimately up to them. We don't know what would make their decision. But you're asking for two different things. One is a variance on your property. The other is an extension into the right of way, which has farther reaching impacts, you know, universally. I do want to touch base on, you said other items like what we have commonly also are driveway ornamental concrete structures and the mailboxes. The mailboxes, we've always taken the direction that anything attached to your mailbox really has limited say from the township. We kind of look at that as the mailbox itself being a federally occupied space that we're not going to touch. The driveway features, which are very common, are usually the exception, with either a pillar or wing wall type of ornamental feature on either side of the driveway. Those are usually permitted. We're actually talking about drafting ordinances to maybe codify that specifically. Again, the extension of the pillars like this, like the fences I keep bringing up, those are the ones that have always triggered the extra attention.
Thank you. You know, I'm torn, to be honest, because of the labor and the effort that this man is, as a citizen and a property owner, is making to his property to make it nicer.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You know, relative to the right-of-way, we know that right-of-ways are there for road expansion, for municipal and engineer use, and so forth. You know, maybe 30, 40 years down the line, you have these sitting there and they want a road in the widen the roadway. Now, these things are sitting in the right of way. And that's basically the crux of it. When we look at about all the right of way just at the state level on Route 9, you know, and keeping things out of that right of way for those purposes. Otherwise, we grant something, then we're going to have to pay that whoever the homeowner is at that time to go ahead and get back our right of way. It just.
Yeah, Mr. Sayed, let me address that real quick. Most of our resolutions, like for fences or landscape in a right-of-way area, and if they had to gain variance relief or relief to that, it goes in the resolution that if under any circumstance that is needed for road expansion utility expansion or anything, it's up to the landowner or the property owner to remove and replace whatever is damaged. That's usually in most of our resolutions that way.
We structure that in all of our administrative approvals as well. Drainage easements, utility easements, not conservation easements, not farmland buffer easements, but those other easements that are more utility based. We have waivers at the administrative level that say exactly that.
Yeah, but see, the only problem with this is a concrete structure, 2 foot thick. You hit that with the car, you know, it's definitely going to be a liability issue. You know, and so technically we could grant, if this was, say, a post structure that was in the front yard, you know, like that, or, you know, some sort of little pilaster that's there that you're going to connect your fence to and move forward, you know, I wouldn't see an issue with grant and relief, but they would still need the relief from the council, you know, on that. But this is a 3 feet by 2 foot or 3 feet high, 2 foot thick concrete footing under there. You know, it's not just a little structure there.
It's what you call an immovable structure.
Correct. Technically, yeah, I would say. But anyway, Mr. Gonzalez. Do you have any comments or questions? Mr. Gonzalez.
No, right now, I mean, I think we're in seems to be a pretty confused situation. I just don't, with respect to the Hernandez, he definitely seemed like he spent a lot of money on constructing. And with respect to, you know, the town, I don't want in a position that could jeopardize the township either. So whatever we can do to eat with each other in the middle and just figure this out, that's how we should proceed. I mean, all of you have a insight and knowledge than I do on this, so I'm still learning the ropes here, but if I'll work together to figure this out, I think whichever way we can do that, we should proceed.
Mr. Moretti.
I just have 2 questions. One for Charlie. I don't know if it's for Charlie or for Matt, but the construction, when you looked at the as-is printings, Charlie, the construction shows 2 foot footings. Is that deep enough?
That's not something that I usually get into. That's something that when they go to the township and get their building permits, construction permits, they would have to get, you know, building permits.
That's why I said I didn't know if it was yours, if it was Matt's.
Yeah, but I mean, this is something different. It's not like a house, you know, where people are living in habitable space. A lot of times it's up to the applicant to enlist a professional engineer to, you know, design the footings for them. Looking at it at face value, I'd say 2 feet of concrete is probably more than substantial for what's out there.
Very possible that this structure may not trigger building permits at all, unless there's electric run to it, you know, without occupancy, without a load being set on it in terms of a structure or something like that. I don't think this is even going to trigger building permits.
Now, just a thought. You said that we're going to have a 0, maybe to 12-inch setback from the property. Would it be advisable to set a standard, say like maybe 6 inches, so we don't run into this where he accidentally reads his property line incorrectly?
So
That's you, Matt. Charles.
So yeah, I think that's a good point, and that was going to be, you know, I was kind of waiting to see how the board, you know, ruled on the application. But my recommendation was going to be to the applicant is definitely enlist the services of a land surveyor to mark out your property line if it's ultimately determined by the governing body that they do need to be relocated outside of the right of way, and give yourself some buffer and set them further inside the property line. You know, if this was an accessory structure in the side yard, it would have to be set back to the height. For the front yard, we really don't have a requirement for it, just that it can't be in the front yard area. So, I mean, you know, 3 feet, if the height of the structure, certainly there should be no confusion of it being in the right of way at that point. But, you know, then it's pushing it back further. I think 6 inches, you know, with a surveyor would be pretty hard to not get it in the correct location. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Hernandez, you understand everything that's being discussed right now?
Yes.
Okay. Christine?
I don't really have anything to add other than what Charlie said. I think if the board, agrees that this is not a safety issue, I think his recommendations to approve, a variance on the condition that the governing body grants their approval is the right one.
Okay. If there's no further questions of the applicant at this time, I want to have a motion to open to public.
I'll make a motion to open the public.
Motion by Mr. Mertens,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Eileen, at this time, we'll open to public.
Okay, for any members of the public that wish to ask questions or comments on this application, please use the raise your hand feature and we will bring you into the meeting one at a time and you will need to be sworn in. And again, you need audio and video. Thank you. Okay, with this, we're going to bring in Barbara Lloyd. She has her hand raised.
Okay.
Miss Lloyd, can you, oh,
There we go.
go ahead.
She's got unmute still.
You just have to unmute your, Can you
Okay,
hear
I'm unmuted. Yes, I'm
okay,
on.
you're fine.
Rod?
Miss Lloyd, would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. May we have your full name and your address, please?
Yes, my name is Barbara Lloyd and I live at 695 Oak Glen Road. I'm right across the street from Demetra and Jose. I really just wanted to say that since they have purchased the property across the street, they have done such a beautiful job. It was unbelievable before. It was just plain, and they have done so much work. He worked so hard on his property, and they're such nice people. And they are residents, they are taxpayers. I mean, I just can't believe all that is going through. I understand a little bit more from sitting in on the meeting about the paperwork and all of that, maybe, and all that. I didn't understand that before. However, they are a pleasure to have in our neighborhood. They have made the area look so much nicer. And I really would just love for them to be able to continue on with the process. And, I mean, a car can come on my property line as well and do something. If someone has an accident, I mean, those are things that the driver could be at fault. I mean, I'm hearing all of you speak. The time and the effort and the money that this family has put into their property to make it look nice, and the taxes that they are paying because they have improved their property, I'm sure their taxes are going to go up. I mean, taxes aren't going down. And there should be something where the homeowner should be able to make their home as beautiful as possible. And we should be able to come together and communicate with one another and say, okay, maybe we need to do this, maybe we need to do that. I personally, and my husband, we have no problem with what they are doing. We think they are making the community more beautiful. And they are a wonderful family. They are hard-working people. And I just think that there needs to be considerations made in this case. I think it was not a deliberate a deliberate attempt to put something together without permission. I don't know about permits either. I don't know anything about it, but I'm learning a little bit more from what they're going through. But this is a wonderful family, and they are making our area beautiful. And I think that considerations need to be made in this case. I have no problem with what they're doing.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Eileen, you have any other hands?
For anyone else who wishes to comment or have any questions on this application, please raise your hand. I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay. Can I get a motion to close public?
I make a
Make a
motion.
motion.
to public.
Okay, motion by Mr. Saya,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all opposed? Seeing none. Mr. Hernandez,
Yes.
I hope you understand what I'm going to ask you. Do you have a summation or something that you would like to say further?
No.
Okay. Professionals, any other comments or?
Nothing
Charlie?
further at this time, Mr. Chair.
Christine? Matt?
Nothing from me.
Nothing.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Who was that?
Mr. Cantor,
Mr. Cantor.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the bulk variance sought with the consideration that the township has to approve the incursion into the right of way. Or setback, however that should be, but
Okay. It's the front yard, the structures in the front yard it's a variance is what it is.
yeah.
That's that. We can't, I just want the board to understand, we can't grant relief being in the easement. That's something this board does not have any jurisdiction over. We do have the ability to grant relief for the structures in the front yard. So that's
Understood.
basically all we can grant.
And Mr. Chair and Mr. Cantor, just to be sure, all of us have heard Charlie's recommendation. And I just want the applicant to be clear that if we grant this relief, and again, Mr. Chair, as you said, we are not granting relief for the pillars to remain in their present location. The applicant has to understand that. And secondly, I think there should be a clarification as to where the pillars should be located, and I would take Charlie's advice on that. In other words, if the board is inclined to grant the front yard setback variance, should the pillars need to be moved, then they would be placed at a location, 6 inches from the property line?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up.
Yes, very good.
Is that, Charlie, what you were recommending before?
Yeah, so I mean, really the board can approve with a 0 foot, but I would say the recommendation would be for the applicant, err on the side of caution and say 1/2 foot. And then that way, if they're off 3 inches here or there, they're not on the property line or over into the property line. That would be my recommendation to the board.
So Mr. Cantor, would you be willing to also include that part in your resolution?
Yes, sir.
I just got a correction, Charlie. It's not the property line, it's the easement line.
So it's right away. So it's the front property line is the same as the right of way line there. So
It is. It does, property line doesn't go to the road?
no, the property line and the right of way line are one and the same there. So the front property line is the same as the right of way line.
Okay, just wanted clarification there. Okay.
One other item to add, Ron, this might be for you. I would recommend putting a time frame on the governing body approval. We do have the holidays coming up, only one meeting in December, reorganization in January. thinking maybe by the end of February. There's 2 meetings in January, 2 in February. We get some feedback from the governing body. I don't know if you want to sunset the variance based on, getting a decision, or just to have it in there. That's something that I could enforce.
Well, the variance would, obviously be out there for a substantial period of time. Why don't we say, where are we at, November? How about 90 days, applicant to make a, 90 days from the date of the resolution?
Sure, and that'll cover both of February's meetings. I think that's fair.
Mr. Hernandez, at this time, before I take a second on this, do you understand what's going on in the process?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Cantor, but with the additional information that was placed. Is that correct, Mr. Cantor?
Yeah, 6 inches from the property line.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Moretti. Any further findings of facts?
Yes, exactly what Mr. Cantor had said, especially the 6 inches from the property line there, because this will ensure the fact that he doesn't in error build it in the easeway again. So I second that motion to make sure.
Okay, now as far as the setbacks and everything that we're talking about, the 6 inches, that's only if the council doesn't approve.
Approves, yes. That's only if the council does not approve their present position, correct?
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes,
Yes, with the 6-inch setback structures in the front yard, after going to the council and resolving the being in the right of way, I say yes.
thank you. Mr. Mertens,
Yes.
Mr. Moretti,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
I want to say that I'd like to know that we're going to use a 90-day time frame. And I'd like to know if Matt is okay with the 6 inches.
Yep, that would be fine.
Okay. And if everybody agrees to move it back to be in compliance, does that relieve the liability, Mr. Tropoli?
The homeowner will be responsible for any structures that he owns. So I think that it would be up to the council, if it remains in the right of way, to place the homeowner on notice. But I think generally speaking, if structures are in his front yard on his property, then he will obviously have his homeowner's insurance, which I would think, cover any potential liability that he would have. I don't see where the council would, I don't see where the board would have any other liability, any different than approving a use variance, say for a restaurant, which catches on fire, or something of that nature. So I don't see any liability for the board here. I would see more liability. I would see it differently. Maybe the council needs to look at it as structures in the right of way, but approving it to be within a front yard setback on his own property, I don't see an issue with liability.
Okay, then my vote is yes.
thank you. Mr. Saya,
I want to go on record and state that, we're putting an awful lot of responsibility on a council to spot zone, and for many years, we've been against the council doing that, not in accordance with the master plan, etc., from the dais when they're supposed to be in front of these boards. I do feel for the applicant, and I'm hoping that this applicant, doesn't wind up with an albatross around his neck as he tries to move forward with the process and finds it's a futile endeavor. So with that, as long as that's on the record, I support the applicant in his endeavor to go in front of the council and see what he can find out.
So that's a yes, Mr. Saya?
That's a yes.
Okay.
thank you. Mr. Cantor
Yes.
and Chairman Nansen.
I too want to agree with all of the testimony and what the comments that my board members have made, the motion the findings of facts, all of that. I too agree with Mr. Saya to a certain extent, but this board has no jurisdiction on granting any type of relief for a township easement. You know, that we can grant the relief in the front yard setback, but we can't, or the front yard structure in the front yard, we can grant that relief. However, we can't grant a relief for a structure that's in the easement itself. Only the council or the governing body could do that. So my vote is yes also.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez, good luck with that.
Mr. Nansen, Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a real quick question. Is it his responsibility to go to the council now?
Yes.
Yes.
What I would suggest.
Make sure he's aware of that. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
I'll reach out and give him, I'll talk with Joe Clark and see how we best approach the council, how we do that.
That's what I was going to advise.
Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez is to reach out to Mr. Howard in the land use department and move forward from that aspect.
You talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would suggest that you contact Mr. Howard up at the township and just move forward from there. He'll help you on what you need to do now.
Okay.
Okay? And good luck with that. It does look nice, and I do agree with the lady that spoke earlier. And it does look nice. I drive by there all the time.
This is friend of mine. He's a really nice person too.
Yes, sir. So good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Eileen, is Jennifer online yet?
No, I have not seen Jennifer yet.
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break real quick and let everybody.
The zoning board will now take a 5-minute recess. They'll be back at 10 after 8. The zoning board will now reconvene.
Okay, the next case will be case number BA 1315A GF United Realty LLC. Conditional use variance, preliminary, major site plan, and bulk variances.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, that's a typo on my part. It should be preliminary and final.
Okay, preliminary and final site plan
Thank you.
and bulk variances. Application of GF United Realty LLC as applicant and GF United Realty LLC as APYG Realty LLC as owners seeking conditional use variance and amended preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct a 1,910 square foot addition to the north side of an existing auto repair car rental building in order to enclose the existing exterior large vehicle lift on lots known as 1301 and to expand the use on lot 14 to the north. Improvements lot 14 will include removal of existing residential dwelling use in order to construct 49 space parking lot, driveway, site lighting, landscaping, screen fencing, building signage, stormwater management basin with associate site improvements on premises known as block 141, lots 1301 and 14414 US Highway 9 South. Expiration date November 25th, 2020. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm going to be having 4 people testifying total.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Okay, got you.
Okay, my name is David Weinstein.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and swear everybody in if you don't mind.
Can you
Okay.
tell me who they are so I can bring them into the meeting, please?
Yes, Janati Flashley is right next to me. Chris Rudman is the architect.
Okay,
Christine Cafone, who's the
Okay.
planner,
I'm Rich DeFalco.
and Rich DeFalco. And that's it.
Okay, Mr. Chair and Mr. Weinstein, if you would have your witnesses, please raise your right hand. We'll and take an oath. You swear the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Starting with you, Christine, because you seem to occupy the screen tonight. Your name, please?
Hi, it's Christine Nazaro Cafone. Nazzaro. Cafone is Cofone.
Thank you.
And I raised my hand before because it's pork roll. So that's why my hand was raised.
was wondering.
Oh, we were
That's why it
wondering
was
why.
raised. That's why, because I wanted to just make sure everybody knows it's pork roll. That's why.
Okay. Thank you for that tidbit. Rich DeFalco, state your name.
Richard DeFalco, DIFOLCO, licensed New Jersey engineer.
Thank you. And Mr. Rudman, please.
Chris Rudman, RUDMAN, licensed New Jersey architect.
Thank you. And the applicant, please.
Full name, short name is Gene.
I'm sorry, we couldn't quite hear your name, sir. Gennady, is it?
Yes, it's full name, but Gene is okay. It's my short name, even though it's short.
Okay.
Gene.
Okay. Eileen, did you get that?
You're muted, Eileen.
Ian, what is your last name?
Fleshler, Fleshler.
Thank you.
Okay, all sworn, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Weinstein?
Yes, the premises in question is Highway Commercial Zoning District. It is known as Block 141, lots 13.01 and 14, more commonly known as being 404 and 414 US Highway Route 9 South. In the preliminary plans and recommendations from this township, it was recommended that those two deeds be merged under one owner, so APYG Realty no longer exists. They're now jointly owned by GF United Realty, who is the applicant. The applicant now seeks a conditional use variance.
Mr. Weinstein? Yeah, like, can you adjust your mic a little bit there? Because it's really breaking up.
Is that better if I step closer?
That's it. You got
Okay. I was trying to be polite to Mr. Fleshler.
Okay, sorry.
That's my mistake here. Okay, let me start again. The premises in question is located in a highway commercial zone on Route 9 and is known as Block 141, lots 13.01 and 14, more commonly known as 404 and 14 US Highway Route 9 South. These two properties, at the recommendation of Township Howell, were merged under one ownership, that being now GF United Realty. APYG is no longer the owner of that property. The applicant, which is GF United Realty, now seeks a conditional variance, use variance, and preliminary and final site plan to construct a 1,910 square foot building, one-story addition to the existing building. The applicant proposes to continue the auto repair service and car rental service at the site. The applicant proposes to construct the associated parking and access drive on the adjacent lot 14, remove excess pavement areas and the storage containers from lot 13.01. The applicant proposes to construct a stormwater feature on lot 14. The applicant proposes the consolidation of lots 13.01 and lot 14 into one lot. The applicant is also seeking the following variances from the requirement of the Howell Township zoning ordinance. Number one, section 188-87, applicant proposes an EV charging station approximately 3 feet from the property line, whereas 60 feet is required. The minimum front yard setback in the highway commercial zone district is 60 feet, whereas 37.9 feet is existing. The applicant is proposing a lot coverage of 83%, where the maximum permitted in the zone is, the district is 70%. Per section 188-34B6, 100 foot. Do you need me to slow down or am I doing okay?
No, you're okay.
Okay. A 100-foot stream corridor buffer is required, whereas none has been provided. Per section 188-34B, 15-B, no open storage of vehicles and materials permitted within a stream corridor, whereas the applicant is proposing the building of a parking area, driveway aisles, trash and tire enclosures. The trash and tire enclosures will be enclosed with a masonry concrete structure around them so that they look nice and aesthetically pleasing and present sightline appearance from the highway. The section 6, number 6 per section 188-63C, a 10-foot buffer is required between non-residential use and residential uses on zones specifically required between the subject property and lot 21 to the west, and none is provided. Per section 188-11B, no necessary structures will be erected at any front yard, whereas the EV charging station is located within the front yard area. Per section 188-6, accessory structures shall be set back twice their height from the side and rear lot lines, whereas the applicant is proposing a trash enclosure set back 1 foot from the southern property line. Per section 188-12A, fences in the business zone shall not exceed 8 feet in height when located more than the required setback from the street, whereas the applicant is proposing a 6-foot high concrete fence within the required 60-foot front yard setback along the northerly lot line. The applicant is also seeking the following waivers from the requirements of the Howell Township zoning ordinance. Per section 188-22, the light intensity provided is below the required 0.3 foot candle value, and the average maximum intensity exceeds the standard of 0.5 foot candles. Per section 188-106F, all driveways shall be 30 feet, whereas the applicant proposes an 18-foot one-way entrance and an exit and 25-foot two-way internal driveways. Per 188-106G, landscaping is required between parking areas in the building. None is proposed. A total of 49 striped parking spaces and 14 unstriped parking spaces are proposed, whereas 54 striped spaces are required. Per 188-132, public sidewalks are required and none are proposed. Per section 188-25, private walkway access are required to a public sidewalk. None is proposed. Applicant will seek such additional variances, waivers, permits, and exceptions from the township ordinance pursuant to ordinance and municipal land use law NJSA 40-555D-1 at SEC as a board may deem necessary for this application to be granted without further notice. In a nutshell, if you can picture where his property is located, there's a house that's a mixed-use house that the town actually wants to get rid of because it's mixed residential and commercial. As part of our application, we're going to yield the residential zoning aspect of it and make it strictly commercial. We're going to get rid of an eyesore, which is really this rundown, beat up house and grass, and just make it into a flat parking structure and thereby alleviate all of the parking problems he has with trying to get around a narrow parking area. And the engineer and the people will discuss that. But basically what we're doing is we're responding to the code ordinances requests for corrections to the property. We've had many issues with parking being too close and not enough parking spaces. We've had a problem with that property because they don't want the mixed use. So really most of our application is giving exactly what the Township of Howell is asking for. It just has to be approved by this fine body to allow us to do so. I would ask that Mr. Fleshler now testify and just say in his own words what he proposes doing, if the board so chooses.
Yeah, that's fine.
"45 years ago, I moved from a smaller shop to bigger and grew up 5 years. And I got limited parking.
We're not
Mr.
picking
Fleshler,
up
we can't
anybody.
hear you.
Okay,
Can't hear anybody.
okay. Is it better?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, I bought a property 5 years ago. I moved from small shop to bigger shop and I grow business. And lately I got not enough parking spot and my property is pretty tight. And I tried to expand it. I bought it next to our properties. Fortunately, it was for sale and I tried to expand my parking and expand it a little bit garage because I have lift outside and I would like to cover it basically that lift and put another one under roof. That's what my plan, and put electric vehicle charger on the front or also for expanded business, because when it's electric vehicle charging, we can maybe fix that electric vehicle also.
What's your hours of operation?
Right now I'm from 8 to 5:30.
6
And
days?
Saturday until noon.
Okay, repeat that one more time, please.
Saturday, Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock to 5:30, and Saturday from 8 to 12.
Okay, no Sundays,
No Sundays.
even with the charging stations?
Charging station, it's going to be automatically charged. It's going to be credit card and nothing else. It's possible to charge it, and I would like to put fast quick charge, like it says. It's 40 minutes and it's done.
And that's going to be open 24/7?
I'm not 100% sure yet. How does it work? This is Mr. Weinstein. This is just to prevent confusion. This is not going to be available for public. The idea behind the electric charging station is, as we all know, it's a goal of the Biden administration that by 2050, we're not going to be reliant on gas-powered vehicles, and we're going to all electric vehicles. In order to repair those vehicles, you need a charging station, because many times the vehicles come in with dead batteries. This is not intended, or is planning to be intended to be used to be open to the public or to be selling electric charging to the public. It's not going to be the equivalent of like you see on the Parkway, a Sunoco charging station, where the public come in and charge it. We're not proposing that.
So this is totally private.
This is totally private. This is strictly for the purpose of allowing him to repair electric vehicles, which is where we're going. The additional covering of the property that we're proposing actually is an expansion of the property to facilitate fixing school buses for the Township of Howell. Mr. Fleshler's company right now repairs school buses for Howell Township and transmission. Nail transmission, we're doing a lot of business with like townships. Marlboro, Manalapan, small school buses, not a big one.
And approximately how many employees on site?
We got 6 people.
How many?
6.
6?
Yes.
Any possibility of any expansion, hiring?
Maximum 1 more person.
What's that?
Maximum 1 more. If I do extension, it's going to be 1 more lift available and maybe going to be 1 more.
Okay.
No more.
Okay. Now, is this open to public? Is the public able to just come in and have their car worked on or vehicle worked on?
Oh, of course.
Okay. And do you have a lounge for them? Or if
people, no, just the coffee.
Okay.
Waiting room, coffee.
Okay.
Vending machine.
No, I know, but is there going to be a area where they can, wait for their car to be?
Yeah, I got this area. I have it. I have office with 1 to 8 people who can sit down.
Okay, so
coffee machine.
Yeah, at any one time, how many people for the public could be there? You're saying 8, correct?
Maximum 8, yes.
Okay. Charlie, do you have any questions of the applicant?
That is a good question. So the charging station, that's just for your repair use of the site. You have a Avis rental on there too. Is there a possibility that the Avis might also utilize the EV charging station?
Possibility, yes.
Okay.
I don't know yet.
So
Excuse me, sir, there is a problem right now because I've been in touch with Avis and we're not even sure if Avis is going to be here a year from now. There's possibility that Avis may be going under. So I've been in touch with the Parsippany Council and they're working on reduced staff and everything else because of the COVID virus. So in theory, yes, there's a possibility as Avis goes to electric cars that they may utilize us to charge their vehicles, but I don't want the two 100% linked because they themselves are not sure if they're going to be here a year from now.
okay.
Sorry to say that, by the way.
Yeah. So I guess along that lines, is it your intention to abandon that car rental use of the site, or you want to continue that to operate even if Avis leaves the site?
Even Avis leaves, I would like to do that because
Can't hear you.
number one, it's a future electric vehicle. It's a future. I don't think you'd refer to. Do you want us to?
Yeah, so I just want to make clear, you're saying Avis may go under, but you might get a separate tenant or a separate rental car company come in there and fill that space, and you want that use to continue on the property, right?
Not a rental. I'm not planning to get rental if they're gonna leave. Some small office for like something with no customers, no cars.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear for the board. So it sounds like if their lease is ending, then that use is going to end on the site there, and the applicant is going to be the sole user of this property with his repair business.
Yes.
That is all I have.
Really quick on that point. So I just want to make sure the applicant's aware. So if Avis goes under, there's no more rent, like Hertz comes in or Enterprise comes in the day after and says, we're going to do exactly what Avis is going to do. Based on the testimony you just gave, the zoning officer is going to deny that. Are you, that, I just want to be clear. That's what you just agreed to?
Yes, probably yes, because first of all, Hertz is like 2 houses down from me. Got place already. And I'm not happy with Avis because they occupy too many vehicles, too many spots, and I need that spots for my business.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, Charlie.
That's all I have for Mr. Fletcher.
Okay, Christine.
Yeah, just one question. He's provided testimony that the EV charging station will only be for his business, but will you have signage on that, or how will you prevent the public from using that station? Because I know there are, you know, like if you have an electric car, there's maps and places on the internet to find electric vehicle charging stations, so you are able to charge your car. So will you have any signage or anything up to?
Probably online only. Signage probably I have to have sign for electric station, but most of them online because I would like to bring the vehicle for repair. That's most of mine.
The goal is not to become Sunoco. It's not to be a place for people to stop to charge their car, Ms. Bell. It's not to be listed in Google Maps as a place to go and get your car charged.
Something charge and repair. Let's say.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
that it. Okay. Okay, Mr. Weinstein.
Ben's back, Wendell.
Is there any questions from the board?
Yes, I have one.
Okay, Mr. Mertens.
I haven't seen the site plan, but I am looking on the Google map. There is a car wash. Is that part of the applicant's property, or is that separate?
No, that's separate.
It is separate. Okay, that's all I need to know.
Okay. Mr. O'Donnell.
Wendell, May, is he going to be knocking down all those trees in the next lot?
Which side are you talking about, sir?
Or, yes, I guess. Between the two lots that we own, we're going to knock those trees down and make it a large parking lot, but we're placing it with trees in the front as a drainage area with with grass and trees to allow for runoff and things like that to prevent it from going onto Highway 9.
I think Mr.
I didn't mean
DeFalco-
to step on your toes, Sherry, but I saw that and I was just wondering.
No,
I'm sure you got a question about it also.
yeah, Mr. DeFalco will probably put testimony on about that.
Definitely.
Mr. O'Donnell,
I don't have any questions right now.
okay. Mr. Cantor? None, okay. Mr. Moretti, you already asked yours, or do you have any further?
No, just, is that a house in amongst those trees that they were talking about?
Yes.
I don't see a site plan, so I can't go by what they're planning on doing, that's why.
There's a house that we're knocking down that was there as probably Mr. Moretti. That's being knocked down.
Okay, all right, we got a site plan here, great.
Yeah, great.
That house is gonna be knocked down.
The container can be removed too.
The what?
Containers, which one between properties?
Okay.
Remove.
Okay.
Because we're planning to put some storage area for next to the garbage.
Yeah, Mr. DeFalco will further testify on the site plan here.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Who haven't I called? Matt, can you put the faces back up? There we go. Mr. Hughes,
I think I'm good for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Saya.
Chairman, just confirming that this is across from Woolies. Know what the rental site looks like. When we go to the north, on the north of that site, there appears to be a couple of mailboxes, but there's only one house. Can we confirm that? Or is there two houses there?
No, it's two mailboxes because one for Avis, one for GF United. But the same address. That's why.
Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Nothing from me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Weinstein.
Yes, I'd like to call Mr. Rudman, who is the architect of the property.
Okay.
Mr. Rudman, can you come forward and give testimony as to the structural changes to the existing building? Any pictures you have?
Could we get his qualifications on the record, please?
Mr. Rudman, may you testify as to your qualifications?
Sure. I'm a licensed architect with the state of New Jersey. I have over 20 years of experience. I have a degree of Bachelor of Architecture from New Jersey Institute of Technology. I provided professional testimony in front of boards like this before.
Thank you. We accept your credentials, sir.
I don't know. Do we have the latest revised elevations available that we can put on the screen? Or I could share my screen if that's.
Mr. Rudman, can you share your screen?
Do we need to mark any exhibits, Eileen?
The exhibits have already been marked.
Well, as you bring them up, can you just please tell us which one it is?
Sure. This is sheet A201. This sheet here.
Is this from the plan set that was submitted with 3 sheets? Last revised 12/3 of 19?
This is dated revised 6/6/20. This is revised in response to the board's comments.
Okay, I did mark that then as A15.
I just wanted to make sure that was on the record. Okay.
So we are proposing a 20-foot by 95.5-foot one-story addition. This will be on the north side of the existing building. This addition will be set back from the existing facade 18 feet 10 inches. This is the line of the existing building. This addition is in order to provide service to large trucks on lifts. Therefore, we've provided a 20-foot high ceiling inside. This is resulting in an overall building height of 23 feet. There will be overhead doors on all three sides of the addition to allow for proper vehicle access. The exterior of the facade of the addition will be finished with a 44-inch high smooth block base that will be topped with a white ephes finish. To break up the elevation and the massing of the addition, there will be a pitched gable roof at the front that runs back 37 feet 8 inches. This roof will have a one foot overhang. After the gable roof stops, the rest of the building is a flat roof. This flat roof would be topped with a stepped cornice with pre-finished white metal coping. On the north elevation here, we've added a few windows to break up the plain facade. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, I saw that Ms. Beam was available. Jennifer, do you have
I'm here.
Yeah, do you have anything to add on the design here?
I don't. I mean, listen, I think they did a really good job in trying to comply with the intent of the ordinance. Are those windows like on the, once you get past like the gable roof and you get towards the back, are those actual, are those windows?
Yeah, these are real windows, aluminum framed windows.
So they're not like fake windows, they actually see into the building?
Correct. Here's a floor plan. This can show you the location of the window.
So, I mean, I think that really breaks the facade a lot. So I don't have, given where it's located, they're really going to clean up the site. I don't take any exception to the architecture. I think, you know, based on what they're trying to use the building for, they've done a pretty good job at complying with the intent of what we require.
Okay, Charlie?
Yep, Mr. Chair, the only comment that I do have is the building addition is proposing a new sign on the Route 9 frontage. The existing building has a series of signs on the facade, and then there's also one freestanding sign with two placards on the property. So they do need a variance for the number of signs for the property. I counted 5 wall facade proposed. So 5 wall facade existing with the additional 1 makes it 6, and then the 2 freestanding in the front. My only question, I really don't take issue with it. The only question that I would have is what's going to happen with the signage should Avis leave the site? You know, is the applicant going to take that down and kind of, you know, make it look nice?
Yes, we're going to remove it. We're going to repaint it and make it so it's no longer visible. It'll just be a plain face so that it looks nice and pretty.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. As far as the downspouts, Mr. DeFalco will be testifying to that water runoff.
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So for Charlie and Jen, bottom line up front, is the bay that we're proposing, the additional bay, is it high enough for, let's say, bucket trucks and other things, other types of rolling stock that may come in for repair? And, you know, is that the intent? When I hear that we're trying to meet the intent, what is the actual intent, you know, other than, you know, double decker buses and stuff like that? If it, you know, I just don't know where this begins and ends with regards to what we're trying to accomplish here. Not we per se, but the applicant. And we just want to make sure that, you know, he has all the opportunity to be successful first time around without having to, you know, reinvent the wheel later on. Over.
Mr. Fleischer? Yes, that's the reason. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's biggest reason why I'm doing the big door, because like I said, we're doing school buses, small one. And when you lifted up the school bus, we got 4-post lift. It's going altogether about 20 feet high. And right now we got approval lift outside only. And that's what how we measure how much we need, because when it's school bus is up, it has to be about 19 feet exactly. Or the same with the box truck. If it's box truck, which one about 2-3 foot over the cabin, it's like not a truck, it's like van, cut off van, box truck basically.
Right.
It's about the same height.
Well, I believe, let me try to rephrase what Mr. Saya was saying. Is the height designed enough that it's going to give you enough room to do what you need to do?
Yes.
Even if you expand doing bigger trucks.
I'm not planning to be bigger. Biggest truck, it's gonna be like regular van with a box truck, that's it. We're not doing bigger.
Okay.
I don't touch big truck, diesels truck. We don't do diesels.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. Saya?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions from the board members?
Yeah, Mr. Nansen,
Yes,
how,
Mr. O'Donnell.
how high is that door? I'm trying to see. I see 1711, but that's the new insulated steel overhead door.
It looks,
Is that
it
the
looks
actual
for like
height?
14 feet, 14 feet for the door. I don't mean to steal your thunder. I mean, I know I just entered the meeting, so I feel like I need to like make up for lost time.
Okay.
So 14 feet for the door, 23 feet for the total building, right? Is that correct?
25 feet.
Okay,
It says 23 on my drawing.
Well, I think the gable roof to a certain point, it goes
The
to a
top-
flat top roof.
If you look at the plans that are on the screen right now, it goes from at grade up to the top of that flat roof at 23 feet.
I can't see it on the side there.
Can you circle where it says 23 feet? I don't know who's
There we
doing
go.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my screen.
Yeah, 23.
So Jennifer, that's, in your opinion, enough height for all types of trucks?
Hey, I mean, I don't really know because this is not my bailiwick, but like if they're saying to me that this is going to work for their business model, I mean, obviously the size of the building is going to dictate what they can work on. If that's what they're okay with, then I'm fine with it. The 25 to 23 feet is way lower than we allow in the zone. So I'm fine with it.
Okay. One other question, Mr. Nansen. On the previous print that we looked at, I noticed where they're going to knock down that junky building, which I'm glad that they are. There was septic and water there, but is there sewer, or are they going to continue with the septic and?
I think Mr. DeFalco would testify to that, Mr. O'Donnell.
Because I was looking at it, the septic and the water look relatively close together. It should be 110 feet. I don't know if that needs to be upgraded or if they're going to tap into this current system after the house goes.
Yeah, let's let Mr. DeFalco, let's get his testimony on the record.
That'd be
And
great.
I think he'll answer those questions.
Okay.
Right now, we're just at the architect here.
Okay.
And I have a question for you. And number one is what's the interior height clearance inside?
It's 20 feet.
20 feet on the interior. Okay, is that adequate enough to do the buses? I just want to make sure you have plenty of height.
Yes, it's plenty. We checked that before. It was a plan.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the board members?
No.
No.
That get all the board members? I can't see nobody. Mr. Mertens, okay, there we go.
I'm good with it. It looks good to me.
Mr. Cantor?
No, I just want to see the site plan, the full site plan. Not right now, but.
Okay, yeah, Mr. DeFalco will testify to that.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez.
All good with me.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Weinstein.
I think you stole my thunder and that is my next witness, Mr. DeFalco. So I'd like to turn the floor over to him, sir.
Okay, sir.
Mr. DeFalco?
Good evening, everybody. We have a site plan Maybe Eileen can put on the sheets. I guess we can start with sheet one if you can, Eileen, just to reorient the board from where we're at. One of the issues we're going to be talking about is Long Brook. And on the tax map sheet, which is to the right on the screen, Long Brook is depicted on the south side of the car wash, which is lot 13. We're lot 1301 and 14 where it's crosshatched. So in between Long Brook and our site is the existing car wash building and parking lot and driveway aisles, just so the board knows that we're not up against the brook. The car wash between us and the brook. Okay, that's all I want to show on that one view. We can go to the existing condition plan, page 2. So as explained, the existing dwelling on lot 14 is to be removed. That's the north lot, along with their asphalt driveway, which leads out to Route 9 right now. On the south lot, which is lot 1301, we plan to put the addition on. At this point on the existing plan, we're removing those 2 storage containers. We're removing the dumpster and relocating that. And out at Route 9, where there is an excess amount of pavement, I don't know if the board remembers, but when Route 9 was widened, some of the businesses seem to be pushed way back off the highway, and some of them are right up close to the highway because of the way that the state aligned the road through an area of existing buildings. Like further south, I think near St. Veronica's, there's a Arby's or something that's way back off the road. And up here in this part of Howell, Gene's building was also way off the road. And what happened was that the existing pavement that used to be there in the front as part of the site became part of the DOT right-of-way. That right-of-way line cut his front parking lot basically in half. And there's barricades today out there that say, don't park across this magical line that's the right-of-way. So he's not been able to use half of his parking lot that the DOT took when they widened the right-of-way. Part of our plan removes that excess pavement from the right-of-way and only leaves an entrance driveway and an exit driveway through that area. So right now he has a very wide paved area on the property. We're going to remove that where it's been hatched like a gray tone on this map. Everything in gray gets removed and becomes, in the front, it becomes a grass area, and to the back, it becomes part of the parking lot. Just to let you know that that's why the right-of-way is in a funny location. It's very far from the actual Route 9 roadway. All right, the next page is the site plan sheet. So the addition is shown as that gray rectangle, 20 by 95.5 feet to the north side of the existing shop. The area in front of the building, existing building, is shown as a new lawn area that will be green instead of asphalt. There's an 18-foot entrance driveway and an 18-foot exit driveway, one way in, one way out. And the former driveway to the house, which is to be abandoned, is to be removed and replaced with the grass area as well. Lot 14, which is pretty much the right half of that map, is dedicated for a parking lot and a small stormwater basin. We have parking on the site, which meets his needs for his vehicle demand. There are very few customers that come to the property. It's mostly drop off and then pick up later in the day. The A's on that map refer to spaces reserved for Avis parking, which would be freed up if Avis vacates the building. But right now, the parking lot is sized for both Avis and GF United to operate together. at the same time. If you looked at the site today, south of the existing auto shop, there is a narrow driveway on the south side of the building, and it gets tight when there's vehicles being maneuvered and parked and stored that are being worked on from time to time. They'll pull one in and push one out. It's not a very user-friendly area, so we want to keep the customers on the north side of the building away from the mechanic area and the shop and the open garage doors on the south side of the building, and limit that customer experience to be the north side only. And only the vehicles being worked on and being ready to be delivered to the customer will be on the south side of the building.
Rich, can I just cut, I apologize. Can I just cut in and ask a question there? So south of the building, it's indicated as vehicle repair storage area, mechanic work area. What kind of activities does the applicant anticipate being done in that area outside the building?
Okay, we need to ask Gene that question directly.
Doing a lot of, can I talk?
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of transmission engine job, and sometimes we remove the transmission. It takes about 20 hours to rebuild it. And instead of holding lift, we can push the vehicle out and it's gonna stay outside while we're doing some repair. When it's all done, we can push it back inside and do the rest of that. It's no repair outside, it's most of the repair inside, but it's like vehicle which one disabled, we can push it outside.
Okay, so just to be clear, so like any fluids or anything like that would be inside the building and contained and captured inside the building and disposed of, right? It's just storage of the vehicles after the transmission's been taken out and then you move it back in the building.
Yes, exactly. Or if it's the disabled vehicle was towed by the tow truck, it's also some spot to drop it off.
Okay, but they're not stored long-term. Those are stored while they're getting the work done and then they get repaired and then get picked up off the site.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
so
only for
30 days or less, most of those, would you say?
well, less than 30 days. 30
Okay.
days, it's too much.
Okay, cool.
Unless it's people don't have money to pay.
That's fine. I just want to make sure it's no long-term storage of, junk vehicles or anything like that. And then just in the back left-hand corner of the screen here, there's a tire storage area. So I think Mr. Weinstein alluded to it. Obviously, the dumpster enclosure would be proposed masonry block. Is that tire storage area, is that also getting a masonry corral? And like, what are the condition? Are they vehicles that are old, or are they new vehicles that you're, new tires that you're storing there, old tires?
No, just the old one, because right now we use that container, which one I have for used tires. Make sure it's not stay outside. And if you get rid of the container, I'm gonna need some room to take the tires away inside.
How frequent would you say those get removed from the site, and how do they get moved?
Usually once a month.
Once a month, and then how do they get taken out of there? Is someone actually physically going there?
Special place, yes, special place to pick up the old tires.
Okay,
Which
so
one I have to
vehicle's
pay.
not backing up with a loader, right? Someone's actually physically tossing the tires into a
No.
truck.
No.
Okay.
Once a month, they pick up the tires.
Okay. The only reason why I asked that, Mr. Chair, is the parking stall is right abut that. I just want to make sure there's no circulation issues. That's all I have for the moment.
Charlie, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. Are we enclosing that area?
Yes.
You are enclosing it with a masonry enclosure, correct?
Yes, we are, Jen, yes.
Okay.
Now, my question, is that gated? The section to the south, I barely can read it. Is that a gate across there, and that will be chain link?
We will put a gate across the trash enclosure.
No, right, you're in the exit there.
Oh, that's
Is
a
that
gate that exists. That gate will.
It's existing gate right now.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, since you touched on that, I'll make a comment on it, and Mr. DeFalco might have been planning to, but the fire official issued a review letter regarding the site plan application. One of the comments he did have was that 12-foot wide gate. about it being widened to 20 feet and a Knox box being provided should they ever need to get back there for fire access purpose. Would the applicant have an issue with that, Rich? And can that be accommodated with the layout there?
Well, I know he wants 20 feet. That's when the outriggers are out. If he's going to park his fire truck at the gate, I doubt he would do that. The driveway's only 18 coming in, so the 20 feet, I've come across this before. We have more than 25 feet to the property line and it's all paved. At that point where he enters the property through the gate, it probably can be widened slightly, but he does have an island proposed for landscaping, which we can cut back on the north side of that 12-foot area and make it 6 foot shorter and make the gate 18 feet.
Yeah, so our official also had a comment on the site drives being widened to 20 feet. Can that be accommodated? Are they all one way?
It could be, but again, that 20 feet, in my opinion, doesn't apply to an access driveway. It applies to the site itself. That's in the right of way of the state highway. And
But Rich, typically they ask for 30 feet. So the fact that he's asking for 20 is a gift.
20 is the state law on fire access lanes. I understand that, but 18 feet is a driveway from the state highway to the property.
I understand that, but typically our fire official asks for drive aisles, including ingress and egress, be 30 feet. So he's asking for 20. Can you accommodate it, yes or no?
I guess we can, just some more pavement. Sure.
Is it one way? Both of the driveways are one way only?
One way only, yes.
So Charlie, do they need to be 20 feet if they're one way?
No, that's actually, if they're one way, that's a good point. I don't think 20 foot's required for a one-way aisle, so that's fine. So I mean, really, then it goes back to, so your testimony is on the south side of the building, that's only one way coming out. You're not gonna have two-way vehicles going in and out of there, right?
That's right.
So what I would say is, Mr. Chair, if it's a one-way, if the applicant can agree and we can work this out as a condition of approval, just widen that to whatever the minimums required for a one-way aisle, whether it's 14 feet or 16 feet, and then providing a knock box so the fire department need to get in there. But the circulation around the parking area also needs relief because 30 foot is required for circulation where 25 feet is proposed. Obviously that becomes problematic because then you're talking about losing spaces. I don't know if Rich has met with the fire official. My recommendation would be to the board. I think the straight line runs are probably not an issue for the fire apparatus. It's going to be making the turns on the west and the orientation of the paper, the top and the bottom of the screen. If the applicant's anticipating Avis leaving the site, then maybe 2 parking spaces could be lost on the north or on the west and the east side. So the top and the bottom of that parking bay, just striped in the future. So that way a fire apparatus can make the turn internal to the site should they need to. That'd be my comment on it. Is that something that could be accommodated, Rich?
Yeah, we can look at the striping. I think the main issue with the 30-foot aisle is when you have a commercial use with heavy, whether it's an office park or a shopping center, and you have a lot of customer vehicles, you need the extra width. In this situation, this is a parking lot primarily for vehicles being worked on. And there may be 6 or 8 customers that come and go during the day. The majority of the cars are sitting and not moving. It's not going to be heavily trafficked by anybody. And that's, I think, the basis for the 25 foot is sufficient enough. These spaces are mainly cars to be repaired and Avis being parked here, which is not moving. And it's not a heavily traveled customer area. The workers come in the morning, they stay there all day. The cars sit in spaces all day. And there may be 6 or 8 in and out customers. And that's really the scope of it. So I think it's a very low intense traveling area, and the 25 foot is justified in that case.
I apologize, I muted myself. What I would say, Mr. Chair, is I think as a condition of the approval, if Mr. DeFalco could provide us with a circulation plan with a fire truck showing that it can make all those turns internal to the site, I have no issue with the orientation that is shown now. Obviously the fire official signs off on it as well. If we need to lose 2 spaces on the top and the bottom, I would have no issue with the board granting relief for, the parking waiver, if it means that it's, safely, traversable by a fire apparatus.
Okay, and then also, what about the marking fire lanes? The fire requested.
Yeah, so basically they just want them to stripe everything as fire lanes, and I think they might already have it shown there with striping, but they want to make sure that appropriate signage is provided throughout the circulation aisle, which I think he provided a detail. It's just a matter of adding those as a condition of any approval.
Right, we'll take care of that. Yep.
Okay.
Getting back to the site itself, in front of the building is shown the EV charging station.
Right.
That's for 2 vehicles that would be serviced by GF United on site, not open to the public. And we can add a sign that says not open to the public, or maybe there'll be some kind of a locking device that only Gene has the key to, that it only works when Gene opens the door. So we can make sure that that's not advertised as a public charging station. I know the ordinance talks about, back in the day, gasoline fueling stations. They don't talk about EV charging stations. So whether that applies or not, that's more than just an outlet on the wall that you're plugging your car into. It's not really a fuel pump or anything like that. It's electric outlet. But we will ask for the variance that is located within the front setback. The site also has a stormwater basin in the back northwest corner. It's our opinion that we are not triggering the major project criteria for meeting the stormwater regulations, since we have a site less than 1 acre and we have new impervious less than 1/4 acre. We have also a landscape buffer and a 6-foot solid fence on the north property line, 10-foot wide planted buffer.
Sherry, you want to jump in here?
Well, I had a few questions. In the front, where you're going to have the new lawn area, I know it's in the right of way, but currently there's juniper shrubs and roses there. Is there any way to put something besides just lawn back? I'm assuming that's being removed.
In front of the fences, we would need DOT approval to do that, but we can propose that we put that in subject to them saying, okay.
It is quite a large area of just plain lawn. I had some comments on the basin. I don't know, if you're going to want to plant all those plant materials inside the basin. And what about, can we plant more along the, I can't move this, it's off screen, but at the back of the basin, it just says lawn area there. Yeah, well, this plan doesn't say lawn, but this sheet doesn't. But that area of lawn, do we need lawn there? I'd prefer to plant it.
It's a sloped area. If you go to the next page.
Yeah, can you move to landscape?
Grading sheet. It's got 2 feet of slope on it.
What about with a ground cover? Can they do something else?
Yeah, we could put ground cover there.
Or
This way
even,
it'll be less maintenance for the owner to take care of.
Yeah, that would be preferable. There's I know it does not possible with how you have it, but the dumpster is supposed to be, landscaped. I suppose you need a waiver on that.
We need a waiver on that, as well as the tire storage area, which will also have a wall around it now.
And then, can you move the page towards Route 9? can you change the landscape sheet? Oh, missed it. You missed it. There you go. So right now, I made a comment about that oak tree that you have in the right of way.
Yes.
You know, it's best for like shrubs, but I know they usually don't want trees in the right of way added in if they're not there. We're gonna have to, move that out to the corner. I'd really prefer to see the oaks in that lawn area rather than the crepe myrtle. You do have lawn on the south side. You could move the crepe to that side if you want to have something flowering.
Okay. We'll take care of those
Harry,
tree
and then
relocations.
the oak tree you're talking about is to the north of the one driveway, correct?
Right, like dead center on the frontage almost.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, right
no,
there.
it's in the
Okay.
right of way and it's under the wires.
Is that existing tree?
No, that was a
No.
proposed tree.
Oh, that is a proposed tree. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it would function better in the middle of this lawn area, but
Yeah.
that's well into the right of way. And then, currently there's really no existing tree information on these plans as far as, calculations of what's required to be replaced.
Right. We did a count. I think there's 14 trees to come out around that old house.
Right. Well, some of them are larger in size. I know there's some oaks out there.
Yeah, some are larger and some are dead also.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, they should be calculated. I cannot get to my list.
Do we know what plants are being used on that north property line? I see, it's hard for me to read the writing of the plant.
Yeah, the
Here in
evergreens.
Cypress.
Yeah, I asked for them to be switched. I'm assuming Mr. DeFalco doesn't have an issue with changing some of the species I made mention of, but I personally think green giants would be better
I
than
agree with you
Leland's.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, the green giants are like a salad bar for the deer though.
No, that's opposite. No, they don't eat green
Yeah.
giants.
Look at my backyard. I don't know.
You might not actually have the western. Some of them aren't the full western
You might have
arborvitae.
emerald
Okay,
green.
we'll make sure that we put in the species that you recommend and that the deer will not devour
Yeah,
them.
well, hey, I won't say they will not eat it, but they do prefer Leland's over western arborvitaes, but I have seen them eaten. But
Okay,
it's an
we'll work
attempt.
that out. The type of tree will be the best we can do out there. We will have fence on two sides of it, so that will help a little bit.
Yes. I do think so. I also noted, you're supposed to have a 5-foot strip of landscaping along the frontage. You do have that small strip on, by the parking area, but technically it doesn't continue. It's supposed to be a continuous strip.
We can again ask the DOT, because we'll be asking the DOT for a couple of things when we take out the pavement. We can ask for that, a 5-foot wide shrub planting area against the right-of-way line. That would be on the state property.
Is that it, Sherry?
Yeah, I don't know if Charlie, I didn't call out all the ordinances or all the variances waivers I mentioned with the parking. They don't have one tree for every, 5 stalls. 10 stalls, sorry.
We'll make sure we comply with the requirements of the town for proper treeage. I don't know if that's a word, but well, proper tree coverage.
Sherry, what about the buffer along the western property line?
Yes. Yeah, no one's mentioned that one yet.
Yeah, so you're required to have 10 feet along, and so there's buffer required between the property and the back, which is the western lot line where there's residential uses. And while there's some area where you refer to lawn, which I guess you're gonna put ground cover per Chari, but what about like the parking spaces that are basically right up against the property line? And I want to mention that in conjunction with the fact that you need relief for coverage. Like you're significantly over on your coverage, and this is a zone that we allow a lot of coverage. We allow 70% and you're at 83%. So I'm gonna need some testimony on both of those things.
Okay, well, just to let you know, the new lot to the north complies with the coverage. The existing lot to the south is over, and the average is 80-something%, which is above the ordinance.
Right, so, I mean, you have a lot of pavement on that southern lot. Is there a way to reconcile that a little bit? I mean, I get that the southern lot doesn't comply, but you're here for an overall project, and so I'm just asking if there's a way to comply, and if not, I'm gonna need some testimony to justify it, as opposed to it is what it is.
Right, I understand. And we're also taking away, I know it's not our property, but there's a large area of asphalt in the right-of-way right in front of our site.
Yeah.
That are removing, which benefits the general area. And I know it's not our property, but we can't ignore that it's going away.
But all the trees are going away, those mature oak trees.
So let's go back to the rear.
We're in a commercial zone, though. We're on a commercial highway zone, and he has the right to put in his commercial use. If we have to pay.
Well, I mean, you have a right to put in a commercial use within the parameters of the zoning. So let's just call a spade a spade. Number one, you're here at the zoning board, number one, but you need a buffer in the back. So let's start with that. So your parking spaces are literally up against the property line, correct?
That's what they exist. But we'd also like to point out that there's an open space lot behind us and a conservation easement behind us in that zone, which serves as a buffer to the homes. And that's probably why it was put in when that homes were built, because these properties existed before those homes existed. So that buffer served the homes to prevent it from seeing the commercial uses on Route 9, not vice versa. So
I don't think that that's what the buffer is. I think it's a conservation easement. So I don't necessarily think that it's intended to create a buffer, but I'm gonna just put a pin in this. And I know Ms. Cafone is listening. So I'm gonna need a little bit more planning testimony on that item when you come up. Again, I understand that if you take the two lots separately, the northern lot complies and the southern lot does not comply with the coverage, but that's not what the application is. It's one site that has, you're proposing 83% where 70% is the requirement. So again, is there an opportunity to reduce any additional pavement on site and without compromising the circulation? And if the answer is no, the answer is no. But again, we're just going to need some testimony to justify the 13% overage on the coverage overall.
All right, well, I think the main reason why there's a limit on coverage in the ordinance is to limit the amount of runoff that comes off the site. And we have designed the drainage in such a way that we are not increasing the runoff. So from the drainage point of view, the coverage is not causing a problem. From the ordinance number in the column and on the table, it causes a problem. But it's not causing any runoff problems. And I agree that if there's a way to eliminate some of the pavement, I don't know whether gravel is still considered impervious coverage, but perhaps there's a way to do.
I wouldn't consider gravel on a site like this. It's going to get driven over to be pervious. It's not going to be pervious. It's going to wind up being compacted. So I guess
I meant for the parking areas, which are not heavily traveled. Like
even so, a parking area that's gravel, I would consider impervious. So what I'm going to ask is this: is there an ability to reduce the pavement and not compromise the circulation? If the answer is no, the answer is no.
I guess I'd have to ask the client that, if he's willing to eliminate parking spaces. The aisles are pretty much set. I think that would stay intact. The only possible location for any of the impervious to leave the site would be to remove existing spaces behind the building, which would interfere with his operation, and also to not have as many new spaces, such as if the Avis people left, those spaces could be, that number of spaces could be left as green, if that benefits the ordinance. But
What spaces are you proposing, Mr. DeFalco, or eliminate? Can you point to it?
The client would have to agree with that.
Mr. DeFalco, can you point to it with your mouse? What spaces you're talking about getting rid of?
I would say the spaces right there, right along the northerly end of the property.
Maybe you can do portion of that, like every other one, and we can put grass between them.
With the tree.
Leave the trees.
I mean, honestly, I'd rather you eliminate the spaces in the back and then provide the buffer that's necessary, to be perfectly frank.
So you're talking, can you see my mouse? So you're talking about this.
Yep.
I mean, okay, so let me be very clear. I'm not advocating eliminating any spaces because I know they need a relief for the parking spaces, right, Charlie? They need relief for the number of parking spaces, right?
Yeah,
I don't believe we need relief. I don't think we need relief.
So I put it in there in the letter, Jen and Mr. Chairman, because the ordinance doesn't specifically list like a car rental facility, any parking requirement or demand for that. I put it in there. They said they needed 12 spaces, I believe, for the Avis. So with those 12 spaces, my requirement is 54 spaces and they only have 48. But if they're saying Avis is leaving the site, then maybe they don't need 54 spaces. Maybe they only need 42 spaces. So, I mean, if we're talking about the spaces along the west side of the property, abutting the township conservation easement property to the west, that's 10 spaces right there. You have 12 spaces for Avis throughout your site. You know, you're still, an increase of 2 spaces if you were to lose those.
The only reason that I advocate for those is because that would eliminate relief. That's the only reason why I'm asking.
Problem is we don't know what's going to happen with Avis.
Well, okay, so let me just preface this by saying, and I apologize, right? Because I entered the meeting late. I missed the testimony about Avis maybe being there, maybe not being there. So forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn. However, if Avis is not going to be there, and it's just going to be a repair facility, and perhaps at some point in time you get another rental facility.
We're not doing that.
You're shaking your head no. Okay, you're through with that. Okay, but my point is that if, and again, I'm prefacing that by saying if it's possible. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm saying if it's possible, and there's the ability to eliminate some parking spaces, which would eliminate pavement, which would help your coverage issue, and eliminate those in the back that would help you provide that 10 feet that's necessary. That's less relief that the site requires overall. I'm not saying that I'm not advocating for the project as it is. I am absolutely not saying that. But what I'm saying is there's relief necessary. And if it's possible, is that something that perhaps you can think about? And I'm not saying you have to answer me in this moment, but maybe like while Ms. Caffone's testifying or something, you guys can chat and figure out if that's going to work for you. I mean, I do understand too that those are proximate to the bays, right? Where you're going to put cars, but I'm just trying to figure out a way that the site works for you, but requires less relief from us.
I'd be more comfortable. Well, we don't know what's going to happen with Avis because it's COVID driven.
Yeah.
But can you see my mouse?
No.
Okay. The spots to the
southbound side of the property. You see the ones to the far southbound?
No.
Mr. DeFalco, can you point to the ones on the far southbound side of the property? There's like, it says lawn, and there's a bunch of spaces enclosed, and then there's north side, I'm sorry. That's north side.
Oh, the north
Yeah.
side, yes, I understand what you're saying there.
That's,
So,
if we were gonna eliminate spaces, those are the spaces that are probably gonna be used the least because of the farthest away from the garage.
that's
So if
what I'm
we're-
saying.
So if
So,
we're gonna yield, we could yield there.
okay, so I'm not asking you to yield anything at this moment, but I'm just saying, think about it while everyone else is testifying, because you're at 83% coverage. And listen, I get it. If you need the pavement for the circulation and the parking that you need, then just say that. You know what I'm saying? Just say it. I'm not saying it has to go away, but it's just something to think about.
Jennifer,
Yes.
real quick, I was on the board whenever the application was back in 2014. Is that back section, is that paved now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those parking stalls exist.
Yeah, they're there now. So yeah,
we approved that back in 2014. And there was, relief granted at that time for the coverage.
right, but that was only for the one lot. Now you're adding an entire new lot and consolidating it into one project.
Okay, so the total amount becomes the issue then, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But Wendell, do you remember if when we approved those spaces,
Yes.
did we approve the buffer relief too?
Yes, we did. The only thing that we stated, there had to be concrete wheel stops back there in place along that edge. We did. It specifically states in that resolution.
Which we do.
Yeah.
Are the wheel stops there, Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Are they in good condition or are they kind of beat up?
It is good condition.
All right, so then let's just drop it. I'm just bringing it up to see if we can bring the site closer to compliance with the ordinance. I don't have a problem with the application, honestly. I think it's going to be a tremendous improvement to the area and to the site. 110%. So I'm just trying to maybe bring things a little bit more into conformance. That's all.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could add on to that too, and if the board were particularly concerned about impervious coverage, I think there are ways that the applicant could provide roof recharge to maybe address, any concerns with that, you know what I mean, to mitigate for some of that exceedance over the 70% permitted in the zone. They are providing a stormwater management basin for the runoff that goes to the west of the site. To the east that goes to Route 9. It's Rich, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. It is pretty much like a net zero to the Route 9 right away with the asphalt you're removing from.
That's correct. It's net zero to the Route 9
But the
drainage.
board were particularly concerned. I think that the roof leaders, I believe, are being directed to the basin. If they were to tie that into some roof recharge that then also overflowed into the basin, that might maybe also, ease the concerns if the board is concerned with runoff.
Okay.
Okay. You want to continue, Mr. DeFalco?
Sure. Let's go to lighting plan, which is the next sheet in the set of plans. So we're asking for waivers on light intensity. We do not meet the code. We don't have enough light throughout the site. We have a lot of zeros on this map, which means no light. And then we have some numbers that are less than the standard. We also have an intensity near the building, which exceeds the intensity, the average intensity. As Mr. Fleischman mentioned, the place closes at 5:30 on the weekdays and noon on Saturday. So only during this time of the year will the lights actually be on until February, I guess it is, 4 months perhaps. The rest of the year, the extra 8 or 9 months, there will be no lights at night because they're not open at night. But during the winter time, and he still has garage doors and opens and cars going in and out at the end of the day, he needs to be able to see. So we can adjust the lighting and lower the wattage on these LED lights, but they're focused onto the site. There's no spillage off the site. And if the numbers need to come down a little bit, we can do that, but we don't want to add any more lights to the site.
Charlie?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, so Rich, to the south and west, is it just shown as 0 because there's no existing lighting there?
Well, there's no new lights. I mean, whatever's there was approved under the earlier application. We didn't get into the
Okay, so it's just because you haven't included in the analysis. There is lights there. Okay. So my main concern, Mr. Chair, is obviously if they can make any adjustment to bring the intensities down a little bit, that would be, I think, beneficial. Providing house side shields to the west, any light that along the west side and north side of the property, I think should be provided. The applicant's proposing the 5,000 K light. That's the harsh blue glare. I like to see them as 3,000 K. And then other than that, you're not proposing any lighting like along the site driveways into the site, Rich?
No, there is some spillage from Route 9. They have some lights on the highway, but there's no proposed lights in the state right of way between the highway and the entrance.
Okay, and then as far as the hours, so there is a note on the plan that says the lights will turn off at 10 p.m., but your testimony for the applicant is during the winter, they're done at 5:30, and then the lights will shut off, maybe an hour thereafter or dim an hour thereafter?
Yes, that's correct. And if there are some security lights that are on the building that stay on or motion detection, that's separate. But the parking lot lights don't need to be on all night long.
Okay. And then just kind of want to just dovetail back into the stormwater management. Obviously with the basin, Rich, we're going to want to see an O&M manual and then just deed restricted as the applicant is owner responsible for maintenance of that. Sorry, I had another thing that just slipped out of my mind. The site circulation. So right now you've got the 2 driveways, you're consolidating the lots. So you're going to need a lot consolidation permit from DOT for the site. And then under that, they'll make any determination on whether you need a new access permit for the additional trips. So I just do want to note that. And then parking, as far as ADA requirements, I think you're over 25 spaces and the regs require 2 spaces once you go over that. Can you modify the layout to get 2 handicap spaces there?
I think it's 2 spaces for active users, not for cars that are parked and not moving. So I think the code refers to not in this situation where it's a vehicle repair place and 30 of the spots are parked cars that are being transmissions worked on. I think it's for the actual customers, not so much how many spaces you have. You wouldn't have handicap spots at the Ford dealer in the middle of a parking lot. So similar thought process.
You're under 25 public, so you're limiting under 25 public to the site.
I believe so. I think we have less.
I mean, are you going to deed restrict that? Because that's not what this application has requested.
What was that?
Are you deed restricting the spaces that X amount are for public and the rest are storage? Because typically we require concrete under stored vehicles. So are you looking to concrete out the rest of the parking lot? Or, in my opinion, you should just provide another ADA space instead of trying to semanticize whether it's a stored car or it's a public space, because they're not allocated that way. And
we don't have an objection to putting in ADA spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
And then the only other comment I have on the stormwater management, Mr. Chair, is the stormwater basin has a bubbler inlet just to the southwest of it. It's not shown on this plan. I have no issue with the car parking over there. I just want there to be a restriction that no structures be placed in that parking space. And then also, if there's a new fence proposed along that property line, that it has some amount of clearance underneath it between grades so water can freely flow and there's no damming or it's not directed to the property to the south.
We consent to that.
And I believe that is
Charlie, sidewalk.
Yeah, so they need a waiver for sidewalk along the frontage, also private sidewalk to the sidewalk in the right of way. Right. There is no sidewalk on adjacent properties, but it has been commonplace of this board to require it for properties, commercial properties on Route 9.
We gave a waiver at in 2014. We given a waiver for that property.
I know, Wendell, but I'm telling you that the majority of the commercial sites that have come around on Route 9 lately, we've required sidewalk, and at some point the sidewalk's going to connect. There's so many people that walk along Route 9. I watch them every day. There's like dirt trails along the highway.
Okay.
That,
As long as we don't impede upon DOT right of way, that's not an issue.
Okay.
the DOT doesn't take exception as long as it's 4-foot concrete. You know what I'm saying?
So you
But
can
I
drive.
would.
Jim, where would you put it here? Since
No,
the-
it would be in the right of way, and the DOT does approve it. It just has to be 4 feet up against the property line, which is like not close to the road itself. It's in the right of way, but it's not on the cartway. But I would really advocate the sidewalk because I'm telling you, I watch so many people walk up and down looking for those bus stops. It's crazy.
But the sidewalk would not be by the right of way. It would be near the paved area of the highway. It would be maybe 5 to 6 feet off the shoulder.
Drive over it.
I mean, you're obviously going to have to coordinate that with the DOT, but from my experience, as long as you're requiring a 4-foot wide sidewalk, the DOT does not take exception to sidewalk being provided.
Do y'all have a problem with that, Mr. Weinstein?
Mr. Fletcher has some testimony he wants to give to that. Mr. Fletcher?
Because if you walk, it's supposed to be next to the car wash. It's a creek over there, water, and it's no room to walk through that. If you
Okay, but that's to the south. There's areas to the north. People are walking along the highway. Your property is not encumbered by that stream. I think you should put in a sidewalk.
We don't have the objection to putting a sidewalk in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Chair, the last questions I just have for Mr. DeFalco go with utilities and just environmental. So obviously there's a septic and well on the existing residential lot 114. The applicant's going to be required to abandon that with his approval and get all Monmouth County Board of Health certificates of abandonment for that. The existing car rental facility, is that on its own septic? And
Septic and well, yes.
okay. So it is in a proposed area of future sanitary sewer. I just, should that ever become available, I think, we should put a condition in that the applicant be required to connect up in the future should it become available. And then obviously with Monmouth County Board of Health, they just had their comment about making sure that the existing septic, they just need an engineer to sign off that it's sized for the use of the site and, there's no issues with how it's currently sized. But that is all I have. I have some plat details. Rich, have you had a chance to review those and have any issue with them? Some of them are, desire typical section, adding additional spot grades, just clarifying some dimensions in the zoning schedule. Do you have any issues with those?
That is page
13.
13, yeah, let me see. Grade section. No, that's fine.
All right,
I have no problem with those.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Jen?
No, I already provided my comments.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Weinstein, at this moment, let's take about a 5-minute break, if you don't mind.
Be fine.
And Eileen will take 5 right now. Okay.
Zoning board will take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, Eileen, you want to call us back?
The zoning board will now reconvene.
Okay, Mr. Weinstein. You want to call your next, or let me go through the board. Does the board have any questions of Mr. DeFalco? Mr. Martin?
Yeah, Mr. Weinstein, my question to you is on the western part of the property, there's a big buffer of woodlands and that separates that development behind there. Is that true?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, and the reason we're not really looking to putting any screening, as our planner stated, is because there's a little bit of a slope that would make it. Okay. The only thing I would like to add is I do agree with our tree expert. I'd like to see with the DOT's blessing, breaking up that lawn area in the front if we could.
I have no objection to that.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. O'Donnell,
I don't have anything. I think we covered everything, you know, with the septic and the well stated that.
Mr. Hughes,
I'm good at this point. Thank you.
Mr. Cantor,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Saya.
Mr. Chairman, my question is, is there battery storage? Is there a battery storage locker? And what are we doing with oils? Is there storage for oils, reclamation, etc.? Because I don't think either of those were addressed. I see that we have recycling going on with tires, but then there's also the batteries and the oils. Over.
We have special container which will mark between the two containers which were on the property. Make sure it wasn't hit anything. It was approval. It has a metal container which one pumping out like once in 2 weeks. Truck is coming in, certified truck, and pump the oil. Used oil.
Also, Mr. Saya, the previous,
Batteries, usually what we got batteries on the shelf, brand new in stock. And as soon as they got new one, it's pick up the old one because they got charged for that. Got charged for core. We don't have old batteries. Only new one.
Mr. Saya, the previous, in 2014, they were required to have certain oil storage and removal processes. That was part of the resolution.
One more, sorry.
He's agreeing with you.
Yep. Any further, Mr. Saya?
Good, thank you.
Mr. Moretti.
I don't know if this is the area, but the EV charging station. It shows it in the front, on the front of the property, near the eastern side of the property. Now that's outside the gate. My understanding is that that's only supposed to be used by the facility, not the public. But it's outside the gate. It's available to the public. And earlier it was mentioned that you, Mr. Chairman, mentioned how they're going to do it, pay with cash. And they had said, no, they're going to use a credit card.
He misspoke. What he meant to say is that it's going to be paid for by credit card as part of the bill for the services. And what's going to happen is when it's not going to be used, it'll be locked down in a sufficient way not to allow people to use it. You can't use it unless it's properly unlocked and sealed.
So we'll have that in the resolution, I'm sure.
Yes, you will. I mean, obviously.
Absolutely, Paul. Don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez.
No, I don't have anything, Mr. Chairman, but thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weinstein, how much longer do you think, how long do you think Christina take?
I would ask the permission of this board to call Ms. Crofone to the stand and let her tell you how long she'll take.
Okay. Your qualifications, Ms. Crofone.
Good evening, Chairman. I'll be as brief as possible. We've gone through a lot of stuff tonight, so qualifications. Good evening. For the record, Christina Zarro-Cafone. I'm a licensed professional planner. I've been qualified in Howell at the Zoning Board and Planning Board, and over 400 other planning and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey.
Education.
My license is, yes, I have a master's degree in city and regional planning from Rutgers.
We accept your credentials, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Crofone, would you like to give your testimony to the board, please?
Yes. So good evening. This is an application, as you heard this evening, for an expansion, and the use is actually conditionally permitted in the HC zone. So we are here seeking a D3 variance. So unlike other cases that you have to hear particular suitability and a Medici reconciliation, because the uses aren't permissible in the zoning district, here the burden of proof that we have to demonstrate as an applicant is that despite that we don't comply with one or more of the conditions, here it's only one, that the site still remains an appropriate location for the proposed use. So I think when you look at the fact that the stated purpose of the HC zone is to provide for highway-oriented development in the Route 9 corridor, I think you can certainly come to the conclusion that this is still an appropriate location, despite the fact that the proposed EV charging station is going to violate this, the front yard setback, which is the conditional use standard that we violate. And I think that there's a couple of things to consider with that as a board. The testimony that you heard this evening is that the ordinance doesn't really break out an EV charging station. It's really a newer type of use, and certainly I'll get to that as far as what your master plan encourages, but it's not like a typical gasoline pump or structure in the front yard setback that would be accessed routinely, habitually, and often by the public. This is something that's going to be utilized for our client to operate his business. So I think that there is a distinction there. I think Ms. Spiro did make some great recommendations as far as how we could upgrade or improve the curb appeal, which would then, I think, be a mitigating circumstance for that variance. So I think the board can certainly consider both the unique nature of the EV charging station, electronic vehicle charging station, as well as the upgrades in the appearance to the site for that, and come to the conclusion that despite compliance with that, or non-compliance with that conditional use standard, it still remains an appropriate location. This is not a Burbridge case for an expansion of a non-conforming use, but I feel like I can't help but bring Burbridge up here, because when Burbridge was dealing with a non-conforming use and the expansion of a non-conforming use, it said it has to be something that has more of an impact other than just mere beautification. And I think really for this application, when you look at the fact that the proposed addition is to allow for the applicant to bring inside his existing lift, I think that that's really a better and more harmonious, attractive use, not only for Route 9 corridor, but for any properties that surround this. So I think you heard a lot of testimony tonight, so I don't want to belabor a lot of the points. I know it's almost 10 o'clock, so I really just wanted to address the D variance, and then I'll get into some of the proofs. But I think in my mind as a planner, I think when you look at this application, you have to look and consider all of the betterments that the applicant is proposing. We are upgrading the architecture. We are upgrading the landscaping package. We are improving and bringing the use more internal. And we're eliminating the residential use on the highway, which certainly when you consider that stated purpose of the HC zone, which is to provide for highway-oriented development in the Route 9 corridor, you can see how the elimination of a residential use is actually far more consistent with the purpose of the HC zone. So I do think that the board can rely on purposes of the land use law, criteria G, sufficient space in appropriate locations, and criteria I for the grant of the variance relief. I know that Ms. Beam had a lot of questions about the lot coverage, and yes, we are at 83%, where 70 is in the zone, but we are really, it's a tight site. We have you have the circulation, you have the existing building, so I think it's a balancing act, and I would love to tell you that I think we could eliminate or bring the coverage down, but I think it's probably more important that we have adequate circulation, and that we do what we can to really just upgrade the appearance of the site. I did think the sidewalks were a good idea. I think that people do walk on Route 9. If you were to go out there and we all drive Route 9 all the time, you basically see they're like the cow paths walked in, worn into the sidewalk. So I appreciate Mr. Nansen that, it wasn't originally approved 7 years ago in 2014, but that was about 7 years ago. So I would think that there could be an argument made for a change in circumstances in the area that would warrant sidewalks. And I think that that would help us on the negative criteria. And when you're talking about the negative criteria, the land use law does not ask you to hold us or any other applicant to such a standard that there be no detriments, just that the benefits of the grant of the variance relief outweigh any detriments. And we talked again about the buffering, and I think given the proximity of the other uses, the slope of the property, I think that the buffer variances are warranted here as well. We're not going to have a substantial detriment on any of the properties that are surrounding us or the zone plan here in Howell if those variances are granted. When you weigh the relief that's being requested against the upgrades that are occurring on this property, which I think are significant. So we talked about aesthetics, we talked about the negative criteria and the impact on the zone plan. I guess the last thing that I want to say is Howell has a pretty recent master plan, 2019, you looked at the land use element. And one of the goals in there was to recognize and adapt to the changing dynamics of the economy. And I think allowing for this applicant to improve his business, internalize the mechanics, and have the EV charging station, which is not for the public, but really just for him to operate his use, is really with one of those, and it was a specific goal in the master plan. And I think it really will allow the applicant to change to, the dynamics of a diverse economy and meet those needs. Another goal in the master plan was to encourage businesses and industries to locate along the township's highway corridors. So I think here you have a situation where he's already operating on a highway corridor, but he's looking to expand his commercial use and eliminate a residential use. So I think that that's certainly beneficial and will have a positive impact on your zone plan. So really taken together, I see a complete lack of substantial detriments resulting from this application. I think you've heard a number of things tonight that the applicant was agreeable as far as conditions of approval to work with your professionals, so the board can evaluate that and the negative criteria. But unequivocally, I can recommend that I think this application substantiates its burden of proof. And overall, if the board were to move favorably on the variance relief that's being requested, the site will be left, in my opinion, much better as far as aesthetics, much better as far as functionality, much better as far as curb appeal, and actually more consistent with your zone plan as we eliminate the residential use and come up with an application that is more consistent with and suited to the vision of the HC zone in the Route 9 corridor. So I think it's late in the year. I am tired, so I think I hit all the points.
You got it.
Wanted
You
to
got
hit.
it. You're good.
All right, good. Okay, that's it. Nothing further on direct, Chairman. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I'm just gonna preface this by saying, Caitlin, something's on fire, just so you know. Beside the fire that's happening in my kitchen, I take no exception to the testimony provided. I agree. Oh, now there's smoke. There could be a smoke alarm going off at any point in time. But I do think that the benefits of this application and the improvements that they're going to make to the overall aesthetic along Route 9, outweighs the detriment of an electric charging station in the front yard. And I think that the testimony provided, meets the statutory criteria. And honestly, I think this is a welcome improvement to the area. That's my personal opinion. It's not, you guys don't have to take that for what it is, but I take no exception to the testimony, and I would, advocate that the board act affirmatively on the application. And the fire's out, by the way.
Charlie?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Board members, any question of Ms. Capone?
No, sir.
Okay, see you none. Okay, can I have a motion to open to public?
The chairman, I make a motion to open to public.
Okay, motion by Mr. Saya. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, at this time, Eileen will open to public for questions or comments.
The chairman has opened the meeting up for members of the public wishing to ask questions or comments on this application. Anyone who wishes to do so, please use the raise your hand feature, and we will bring you into the meeting one at a time. Thank you. Once again, anyone wishing to ask questions or comment on this application, please use the raise your hand feature to be brought into the meeting. And I am not seeing anyone.
Okay, Eileen, can we have a motion to close public?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cantor. Who seconded that?
Yeah.
Mr. Saya second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Mr. Weinstein, do you have any closing comments or?
No, I think I'm good. I think everything has been testified.
appropriately, and unless the board has any more questions for me, I'm prepared to submit it to the board for approval.
Okay. Mr. Martins, any questions?
I just have one thing I'd like to add really quick.
Okay.
Mr. Weinstein had hit on this in the very beginning, but I just want to reiterate again. There are open code, there has been a history of code violations on the site. Ultimately, the wide right-of-way here is very tempting for these automobile uses to use. The other sites have come in front of this board before, and they've been restricted on parking vehicles in the right-of-way and all that. So we enforce it up and down this section of Route 9, but a lot of people look up the road. It leads from one enforcement to the site, leads to the next, to the next, to the next, because everyone sees somebody else doing it. What the applicant's proposing to do here is to move the parking lot over, get rid of a house on Route 9, which we know the houses are not, most houses are not in great shape on Route 9, nor do they necessarily belong there from a zoning perspective. So I think what the applicant's doing here is not only getting rid of a non-conforming use, also getting rid of code violations and beautifying the site. So from a code enforcement standpoint, we couldn't be happier.
Also, Matt, I also reiterate that in 2014, that was one of the main issues that we had at the zoning board at that time of approval. You know, and it's in the resolution itself. They can't park in that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's tempting sometimes, and sometimes we had to move them back. But I think this is going to remove the temptation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I got one last question.
Yes.
With Avis, we're going to give them 1 year to have them come in, and if they don't come in, then they have to come back to the zoning board to come in. Is that correct?
No, we're going to leave them alone if you don't mind. And it's, if Avis wants to stay there, they have a lease, they're welcome to stay. What I'm saying is the economic realities is that if Avis leaves, we're going to give up the right to bring in a new rental company. Avis is it. We're not bringing in anyone now.
And what period of time are you asking for Avis to come? Because you're really not sure.
We have a 1.5 year lease. I would say 2 years is realistic. We're dealing with so many unknowns with the COVID crisis and the aftermath. I think 2 years is a fair statement, because even if we have a vaccine next year, we're not going to know efficacy for another year. We need time.
Okay, so after 2 years, it's a dead issue.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll leave it like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Hughes.
No, sir, I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. Martins.
No, sir, I'm all set too. Ditto.
Okay. Mr. Cantor.
No, sir.
Mr. Saya.
Yes, sir. I was wondering if the applicant, if he hasn't previously already granted us Title 29 from privileges?
Title 39, you mean, right?
39.
Mr. Cook, could you address that?
Okay. And that would have to be a request to the police department if they agree, Mr. Weinstein.
Okay, then I'm sorry, you're catching me cold on this. Can you help me with
Title
this?
39 is the enforcement of traffic of the New Jersey traffic laws on the subject site.
Oh, we absolutely grant the police department the right to enforce traffic laws and handicap parking and all that stuff on the site.
It'll be up to them to agree, but I'll put that in the resolution. Thank you.
We do consent to that. My apologies. I didn't know what you're referring to.
Not a problem. New Jersey statute 39. Thank you.
Mr. Moretti.
No questions.
Mr. Gonzalez.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, any further from our professionals?
No, sir.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all I ask is if the board looks favorable to it, just please work with Sherry on this.
Absolutely.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Saya.
I would like to make a motion to approve this application, granting a conditional use variance and preliminary and final major site plan approval with both variances, including all of the, testimony that's been put on the record and all the agreements that have made that Mr. Tropoli has so eloquently recorded, and going forward. So I think I've heard everyone say what a positive asset this will be to the community, and I tend to agree with them. And I wish the applicant all the best, sir.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Sayed. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion to approve the application. I thought we did a good job going over everything with our professionals and theirs, and everything was agreed upon. And I'm happy to see the house being taken down and a nice business being set up where it is. So again, my motion is to approve.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mertens,
Based on all the testimony from our professionals and the fact that I really enjoy seeing applications on Route 9 like this, where they're going to be getting a nice facelift. I certainly vote yes for this application.
thank you. Mr. Moretti,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Saya,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
To the applicant, thank you for doing business in Howell. Thank you for expanding your business and making it nicer for our community. We appreciate that. Yes.
thank you. And Chairman Nansen.
Yes. For all the testimony that was placed on the record, yes.
Motion carries.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
You also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next case on the agenda, case number BA 1831, Secluda Realty LLC. Use variance preliminary major site plan. Application of Secluda Realty LLC is applicant owner seeking use variance approval and preliminary major site plan approval for the expansion of a non-conforming contractor storage refuge yard on premises known as Block 183, lots 11301, 115, 11601, and lots 11602, 113 Highway 34. The application was partially heard on numerous dates starting back March 9th, 2020, and it's been carried without notice. And then they noticed again in June 22nd, August 10, after a little testimony, updated the status of the application carried to November 23rd, 2020. With the new notice for this meeting for the remote hearing due to COVID-19. Expiration date, November 24th, 2020. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. For the record, my name is Michael Vidiello. I'm an attorney licensed in the state of New Jersey. We're here on behalf of the applicant, Secluda Realty LLC. Mr. Chairman, as you said, we have appeared before the board on several occasions on this application. But just for the record, I think on all those occasions, it was really discussing the status of where the applicant was and whether they were ready to present testimony. I believe tonight would be our first night presenting any testimony on the application.
I agree, and according to our professionals, everything's up and above board and ready to go.
Okay. So I have with me here tonight our civil engineer, our traffic consultant, our environmental consultant, our professional planner, as well as representatives from Secluda Realty themselves. We also have the board review reports that have been issued. Some of the reports are from a prior date. A few of your reports have been updated most recently. So if it pleases the board, we could either start with the reports or turning to my professionals.
Yes, sir. Let's go ahead and swear everybody in that's on here.
Very good.
Mr. Tropoli.
That's fine. So with your professionals, please raise your right hands. You swear the testimony that you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Okay, let's see here. Starting again with Christine, your name, please.
Christine Mazzaro Cafone.
And let's see here. I see next would be John Ray.
John Ray, REA professional engineer. I did the traffic impact analysis.
Okay, next person, please. Is that Mr. Silva?
Yes, Anthony Silva, environmental scientist with Du Bois and Associates, did the environmental impact report and natural resource inventory.
Okay, have I missed anyone?
Walter
Yes.
Hopkins.
Walter Hopkins.
I'm sorry?
Walter.
Yes, I'm sorry, Walt. How could I forget you? Name for the record, please.
Well, it's if I'm unmuted, it's nice to know that I'm unforgettable, but Walt Hopkins, site civil engineer.
Okay, and I believe that's all the witnesses sworn. Thank you.
Mr. Vitiello, I don't see any
Your
members
witnesses, counsel.
here on the telephone.
Yes, the Secundus members, there should be at least 2 logged in. I'll reach out to them right now as
What are their
we're,
names? And I'll check and see if they're on here.
they could be under Nicholas Secundus, John Secundus, or Rick Cifelli.
No, none of them are on here.
Okay. They might have logged back. I'll have them log back in while we're starting.
Okay. If we need them, we can swear them later.
Exactly. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to move forward, sir? Who's your first witness?
Walt Hopkins, our civil engineer, would be my first witness. And Walt, I'll ask Walt to present his credentials briefly, his educational experience and our professional experience as a licensed civil engineer in the state of New Jersey.
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science from Drexel University. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the states of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. I'm also a certified municipal engineer in the state of New Jersey. I have testified before many boards, including this one and your planning board, and have been accepted as an expert.
We accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Walt, is it correct that you or others under your direction and control have prepared the site plan for this application?
That's correct.
Yes, and members of the board, as you're well aware, this is a compliance application. So what the applicant is proposing is really modifications to the site to help satisfy the conditions that your professional staff has come up with. So with that in mind, Walt, can you please describe for the board how the site currently exists and what proposed changes we're now proposing to address the comments that we've received so far?
Sure. I'm sure that the board's familiar with the site, but just briefly for the record, I'll orient them. It's a 13.1 acre site. It's known as 113 Route 34, block 183, lots 1301, lot 15, lot 1601, and lot 1602. Thank you. And it's located in your HD3 zone. The surrounding uses to the north would be vacant property and Caruso Excavating. To the south would be Route 33, the Diner, the Hungry Puppy. To the east, I believe, is the Life Storage, and to the west is Wooded. Off a little bit off-site is the new Toll Brothers development, and I believe there's a recording studio directly adjacent to the property. The site currently exists as the existing conditions plan shows. There is existing buildings, so on the site there's an existing office that fronts on Route 34, and there are outbuildings throughout the property. There is an existing garage, which you will hear us testify about variances that exist with that. That does front that, we call it the flyover between Route 34 and 33. There's also trailers throughout the building, throughout the property, trucks. And they're somewhat organized, but the board and their professionals have asked us to kind of come up with a game plan to show the different uses on the site, where they're going to be located, and quantify that. In addition to that, we've been asked to provide a clear delineation of a circulation route, not only for the trucks, but in the event of an emergency on the site. So with that, I just kind of like to go through, I know we attempted to to testify before you before. Didn't quite have things in order for your professionals, and just kind of wanted to give you an update as to what we've done since our last meeting, and then just go through what's proposed. Because I know the board had some concerns about the progress of the application, and we have done a lot since we've last appeared before you. We have proposed to remove everything out of the buffers, the 50-foot buffer that fronts Route 33 and 34, with the exception of the one-story masonry garage, which exists and is on a foundation. And there's also a stormwater management basin that does encroach slightly onto the Route 34 buffer. After we had a pre-meeting today with the professionals and guidance from your professionals, especially Ms. Beam, we've made the decision to remove that out of the buffer. So the stormwater management basin will be reconfigured slightly so that no part of it is within your buffer on Route 34. We've gone back and forth with Mr. Cunliffe with regard to drainage. I believe we have a plan that he's in agreement with. And what is resulted in is an additional detention basin along the northern portion of the property. Just for the board's comfort, although Mr. Cunliffe has really looked at this, we are required to go to DEP, as you're aware, for restoration of wetlands disturbance, for general permits for our stormwater management basin outfalls, and for transition area averaging. So there'll be at least one other agency that will take a look at the drainage as well. We also met with Mr. Cunliffe and the fire official regarding the current surface. The vast majority of the site is either asphalt, which is the darker gray around the office on 34, or the vast majority of it is crushed asphalt or millings throughout the site. And there was concern about the suitability of that for the trucks and emergency vehicles. And at the site meeting, it was actually determined that the trucks that the Securus operation utilizes has more of an impact than the fire officials. So it's in their best interest to keep that surface traversable. We've also submitted plans back to DEP for restoration, which reflect the plans that were submitted to the board. The restoration plan was submitted on November 17th. The general permit and transition area waiver plans were submitted this past Friday. And all of those plans reflect what's before you tonight, and we'll provide copies of those to the board and their professionals. We've also discussed connection of sanitary sewer for this site. I reached out to Mr. Nunziato, head of the sewer department, who indicated that connection would be permitted. And he suggested that we submit a preliminary and conceptual application, which in the sewer world, that's the first step. That's what you have to do first. So we submitted that on July 31st. We've followed up several times. However, they have not completed their review. We've also copied Mr. Cunliffe and I believe Ms. Beam on several of those follow-up emails just to show progress in that. And what we'd be doing is connecting to a sanitary sewer force main, which was extended for the Toll Brothers application. The environmental impact report was updated to address several of the concerns that the professionals had raised. We've also supplemented that with a natural resource inventory. And there was also a traffic impact analysis, which was submitted. So that's what we've done since we've seen you last. I can now get into what is proposed, but with what's going to be proposed on the site, unless there's any questions as to what we've done so far.
Okay, no.
Okay. So,
Charlie, you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chair. Walt summed it up pretty good. They're proposing a stormwater management basin along the north side of the property. They've worked with DEP and then also with my office to make sure that's good. The only comments that I have on the stormwater management basin was with water quality. There's a calculation in the plan. I just asked that the report be revised to provide the calculation for that. If there is additional manufacturer treatment or increase to the manufacturer treatment to get the proper, water quality, that could be handled as a condition of approval. They're also asking for a waiver from their recharge requirement. Majority of the site is on D soils, which doesn't really have any infiltration capacity. And the water table also is pretty high. I have no issue with granting of that waiver, subject to concurrence with DEP on their stormwater review. For whatever reason, if they don't grant that, applicant should have to provide mitigation or, recharge on site, should they not grant that waiver.
We would agree with all of that.
Also, I wanted to also make a comment as far as the circulation aisles and the paving in there. I know our ordinance requires paving in circulation aisles, but knowing the industry, the roll-off industry, I wouldn't want asphalt paving within those aisles anyway. By picking up and dropping those containers, you're going to rip your asphalt right up. So, and as far as maintaining circulation, the truck has to be, the aisle's going to have to be wider than the truck to be able to even back up underneath the container. So, personally myself, as far as Charlie, I don't take exceptions to that, but I would say that any access apron going into the state highway, they should be required to have asphalt pavement to keep from taking any of the interior rock or anything that's on the tires, have some way to keep it from getting onto the highway.
So, Mr. Chair, to add on to that, they are proposing a concrete apron for their westerly driveway on Route 33. So I think you're suggesting, and I suggested in my letter, a minimum of 30 feet of asphalt as almost a tracking pad. Should the board want something a little bit more, maybe 40 or 50 feet, I don't think that's a, huge burden, to make sure that there's no impact to Route 33. And just to touch on, Walt alluded to, we met with a fire official. I had concerns that I raised to the applicant regarding circulation and how that's going to be maintained and fire access. The chief met us at the site there. He didn't have concerns with the asphalt as a pavement surfacing. Obviously noted that the applicants, it's going to be really relying on them for maintenance of that, supplementing that throughout the year to make sure that that's stable, not only for their equipment, but also should fire need to get in there. And then, I'm going to want to see some testimony from the applicant just on how they plan to maintain that. Obviously, it's beneficial for them and their operations to maintain that. They need to get in and out of the site. So, just want to make sure we get some testimony on that from the applicant, later on in the hearing.
Okay. You may continue, Mr. Hopkins.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to get to that, Mr. Chairman, with the circulation aisle and to Mr. Cunliffe's comments, but he already brought it up, and we had already, I was already going to testify tonight that we were going to add that asphalt apron if the board was so inclined to allow us to continue to use the millings. So there's really nothing being proposed with regard to improvements with what you see before here tonight. We're just going to organize the site, address stormwater management. There's no new buildings. And the only disturbance that you'll see on the plans is for landscaping, stormwater management, wetlands restoration, or there are some dolly pads that we've proposed so that the trucks can park on them rather than on the millings. If there are any fluids, that they would be captured by the concrete. And those all would occur in areas that are existing, that are already covered by milling. So we're replacing impervious with impervious. There's 52,000 square feet of wetlands restoration with this application. That's going to require 430 whips, small trees, and 250 shrubs as part of that mitigation. Ms. Spiro had raised some concerns about the whips and the sustainability of them. And we'd like just to meet with her to come up with some sort of protection scheme to make sure that those do survive. We are proposing supplemental plantings along both Route 34 and 35, 34 and 33. Along Route 33, we are proposing a berm, a 15-foot wide berm, 3 feet high with plantings 4 to 5 feet. Also along 33 where there's existing vegetation, we're proposing to supplement that. Our landscape architect has met with Ms. Spiro to kind of come up with that plan, and that's how we came up with that. The additional landscaping that's being proposed, this is in addition to the trees and the shrubs that I just mentioned. There's an additional 183 buffer plantings and 40 shrubs that are proposed with this application. Through just the going back and forth with your professionals, the additional detention basin, what you will see if this is approved is a reduction of 2 acres of impervious surface. So 2 acres of millings will be removed with this application.
Hey, Walt, is it
Yes.
possible for you to show the site plan? Because I've seen it, but I just want to make sure when you're going through it, people understand what you're talking about.
Well, I can't promise that, but I can at least show them.
All right, I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, but okay.
So
thank you.
You're welcome. And I think, you know, just based on what we were talking about, maybe I'll go to the landscape plan. And for the record, these are the plans that were submitted to the board, last revised November 6th, 2020. Keep wanting to forget 2020, I think. But you can see that there's landscaping proposed all along 34. There's an existing vegetation along the flyover. And then once we come back to grade, there's kind of an open area that I'm sure the board's familiar with. There's also a driveway there that's proposed to be closed. So that driveway will be closed. It'll be replaced with a berm. Then we get back into some additional existing vegetation. So we would supplement that in accordance with our meeting with Ms. Spiro and any modifications that could be done in the field. We do have a typo here, or a little bit of an issue. The trees are not proposed across the entranceway, but there would be on either side. There are 2 detention basins that are proposed. This is the one that we had prior to the last meeting. And then up in the northern part of the site is another long, thin detention basin. This is the area that encroaches into your buffer. We're going to pull that back and then just widen it a little bit in this area. We have 15-foot concrete dolly pads throughout the site, and that's an area that will help organize the site and provide an area for the trucks to park on and capture any fluids if they should leak out. We do have this, it's a little bit, let me go to the dimension plan. We do have a circulation aisle that we're proposing to delineate with bin blocks kind of like along the way, as well as the dolly pads. This is 30 feet wide. The radii all comply with emergency vehicles as well as the refuse vehicles. So there would just be one way in and out along Route 34 and then along Route 33 as well. We're able to move this driveway a little bit further away from the property line, which eliminates the request for a relief of, I believe 30 feet is what your ordinance requires. We are showing a concrete pad there as well, and we are proposed to extend that another 40 feet as Mr. Cunliffe had requested.
Not a concrete though, but asphalt, correct?
We were showing concrete for the first 10 or 15 feet. We were going to show asphalt, but whatever the board's pleasure is, that's not really something that we want to get hung up on. Whatever you want, we'll do.
No, but I think you're required concrete off of the highway, but then you can do the asphalt. Am I correct, Charlie? Do the asphalt in, 30, 40 feet?
Yeah, the concrete apron might be a DOT requirement. As far as internal to the site, I have no issue with that being asphalt. 2.5 inches of base and 1.5 inches of top, something stable.
Okay.
I think you're gonna have to be more base. I think you're gonna.
So I would say, Walt, as long as it complies with the heavy duty circulation aisle requirement, it might be 3.5 and 2.5 or something like that.
I think it's 6.
Yeah, we'll make sure that it's adequate, because the last thing we need is that to break up.
Right.
So we do have an area here. This is for storage of containers. So this is where we would have it contained to the site. There's 52 spaces shown. The applicant can stack those, is what they'll do sometimes in the field. We have tractor.
How high will they stack that? How many container or dumpsters high?
3, I believe, is the most that they will do.
Okay.
Then we have the dolly pads, which kind of also naturally delineates the access aisle to a certain extent. And those are areas, we've sized them for WB67. So we've made sure that whatever we have on here is the largest vehicle that Securitas could possibly park on there. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to be parked there, but we just wanted to show the ability to park.
Okay.
And we have 50 truck spots and 50 trailer spots. There's also just an area here to organize equipment. So if you've been by the site, you've seen that with their demolition service that they do have various construction equipment. And rather than strewn throughout the site, we would delineate in this area. Again, we would kind of have a bin block area to kind of delineate this so that if there's any enforcement issues, it could be, this plan is kind of a blueprint of what it should look like out in the field.
Well, if I could just comment real quick. So previously there was an AJ Perry site north of the Route 34 site driveway. That's being eliminated, right? So that use is being eliminated from the site?
Correct.
Okay, so any equipment and stuff in that storage area you were just talking about is just for the applicant's operation then, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
There was also, I think both your professionals brought up signage. There's an existing small sign on Route 34. The applicant would request that it would remain. I don't believe it complies with your ordinance with regard to setback, and I think you have a 7-foot clearance. So it's really kind of just a vertical sign, and it's approximately 3 feet from the right of way. We would just request that remain and that variance be granted. There's also another small sign at the Route 33 entrance that's being closed. I believe that sign does comply with your ordinance. It is set over 10 feet. I think it's 10.3 feet off of the property line. And I believe it complies. We would just request that be allowed to remain. I think refuse was also brought up in one of the professionals' letters. So our clients, that's their business. So I'm told that they basically put it in the back of one of the trucks when they need to get rid of it, and then it goes to the transfer station or the landfill. There's also
Walt, before you go on from the refuse, does that include like whatever's coming out of the building too?
That's only what comes out of the building. They aren't allowed to keep refuse, and maybe that's something I should have brought up. They're not allowed to keep refuse on this site. The trucks, this is basically a trucking operation. So the trucks leave empty and they come back empty.
So when you say refuse to put in the back of the truck to take out, it's just what's coming out of the building?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think either yours or Mr. Cunliffe's letter said how we have no dumpster on site. So how are we addressing refuse? So refuse and recycling would just go in the back of one of the vehicles. Separated
though, like refuse in one, recycling in another? I mean, obviously I'm not going to be there to check it out, but I'm just asking.
I honestly don't know. And I don't know if we've gotten the applicant on the call, but whatever Howell's, whatever's required, and how I know some towns have requirements as far as separation, whatever is required, they would do.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. We also have, I think this is also brought up in both the professionals' letters. There's an existing 4-foot chain link fence which runs along the property frontage, both frontages. We would just request that be allowed to remain. There are portions of it that do creep out into the right of way, and we have a note on our plan that would be reset so that it is all within our property line.
Okay, can we talk about the fencing for a hot second?
Sure.
A 4-foot chain link, like, is that really doing anything in terms of security? Like, I'm assuming, and I could be totally assuming, so you or Mike or anyone can correct me, but we don't typically allow fencing like this in the front, right? It's supposed to be 50, I mean, obviously chain link we don't allow, but 50% open. But I would think that the applicant would prefer something higher and more enclosed that would be more like a security fence along both frontages if the board were inclined to approve something like that. Is that correct?
I don't know. I'd like to discuss it with them. I don't know what their operations is. I know this is the way it's been for a while. That doesn't make
I know,
it.
but let me just go back to that too. Like chain link is like you, especially along the frontage. I get that it's open and that's all well and good, but it's not what I would consider aesthetically embraced, right? And I am very sure, and I know Sherry's still on the call, that she's been working with you, especially along the frontage on 33 in terms of the buffering, correct?
Yes.
So I would encourage you to look perhaps at a fence that may be less open, given the roadways that we're talking about here, 34 and 33. We're not talking about neighborhood roads that are perhaps a little higher than 4 feet, that maybe are a little bit more enclosed. I would think either like board on board or maybe a vinyl fence that could be located behind the berm, specifically along 33, to provide you the security you need, but aesthetically allow us to have the berm and the landscaping that Shari is going to make sure you do. And the chain link fence could maybe go by the wayside. That's what I'm thinking.
Jennifer, what about a chain link fence with slatting in it or the mat?
Ew.
So
that still looks crappy and it doesn't ever hold up. That's the reason why I'm like, ugh.
So we hear your concerns, we hear your suggestions. I'm a very optimistic person and would love to think that we're going to get all our testimony in tonight and get a vote, but that might be a little unrealistic.
It's 20 to 11. So what I'm saying,
I'm going to take it under advisement, not commit to anything, and we'll discuss it with our client.
Then we can touch base if you need to between now and whenever you come back. But I would not, let's be honest, let me be very clear. I would not take exception to a higher fence in the front yard along 34 and 33, given the nature of those roads and the highway and the speed with which cars drive on those roadways, and have it be more secure than a 4-foot chain link fence. Let's be honest, that's not providing any security whatsoever. Anyone can hop right over that. And I would like for it to be behind the berm that Shari is committed to doing. I think that's a better alternative, provide you more security, and let's get rid of the chain link. That's my request.
Okay.
What do you think, Wendell? I mean, I know we talked about that earlier.
Let him talk it over. They know what we're looking for, so we'll let them discuss that with the client.
Yeah, and I appreciate the clear direction. It just with the way that we are, I got it. There's operational issues. I don't know if that's good or bad, whether solid fence works. So we hear you. I'm sure we're going to address it. I just, when we're in a better form, I want to discuss it with them. And
yeah, that's fine. But it's something that I do think that we need to talk about when you guys come back next time.
Okay. Well, I'm going through my notes. That's really, other than the signs, the refuse, the chain link, that's really, that's what we have. There's some relief that we need that the planner, Ms. Cofone, will discuss. I could gloss over those just to let the board know what we're requesting. And at this hour, at least you know what we're in for.
Okay.
We could also have Mr. Ray speak briefly about the traffic issues that have come up, if you'd like.
Okay. Real quick, let me go back to Charlie. Charlie, do you have any further questions here at this time?
So, well, I just want to make sure the applicant doesn't need or doesn't foresee a need to propose any signage on that Route 33, that new driveway on the west end there, right? I just want to make sure, if they foresee a need, that it's just encompassed in this application and the board's considering it, just as a
Yes.
whole.
None
And then,
proposed.
okay. And then as far as like site circulation, trucks and things like that, does the applicant, are there visitors to the site? Any public? Are they just coming through the Route 34 frontage? How does that work, and how is that maintained and operated, and how do they enforce that on the site?
So my understanding is that there's no, any visitors would just be to the office area, and those are very infrequent. So anybody that would make it past the gate would be an employee of Securus.
Yeah.
Okay, so any visitor just comes right through Route 34. Everything else is
correct.
Securus. Okay.
That's right. Very infrequent, but that's where a visitor would park.
Okay. And then Mr. Silva will, I guess, testify today, next time, about status of all the permits and everything like that.
If we have time tonight, we can have him speak also. I figured we would try to address some of the traffic issues and maybe his issues, if you'd like.
That's fine. We can get to Mr. Ray.
Well, I only want to go for another 15 minutes. We shut it off at 11. So, is there any questions from the board to the engineer, to the civil engineer?
Mr. Chairman, maybe it would be helpful if I'll just glance over the relief that we're requesting, and that way we can kind of gauge if there's anything that the board would like us to focus on when we come back.
Okay.
So as far as variances, clearly we need a use variance, and Ms. Cofone will testify to that. There's a front yard setback required for this existing garage, and it's existing. So your ordinance, is it okay if I take that back? Yeah. So this exists. Your ordinance requires 100 feet. We're at 38. The fences we just discussed. Parking setback is 100 feet. The parking is right up against the property line, and we're not proposing to move it because really there's no place to move it.
That's existing condition, correct?
Yes, yes. Your 50-foot buffer, we're respecting it to the extent possible, but obviously the parking is in there. All of these structures will be taken out. This building is in the buffer. However, it sits below that flyover, and it's really difficult to see, and it's on an existing foundation. I think there was a few other waivers, easement descriptions. We would just respectfully request that they be deferred until an approval so that we get everything buttoned up before we actually produce those documents for Mr. Cunliffe. Architectural plans, there's nothing proposed, so it would seem pointless to have those drawn up. The pavement section, we've discussed that briefly as well, that we're going to propose millings, and we'll come up with a substantial pavement section for the Route 33 and parking length. Your ordinance requires 19 and we're proposing 18. So as far as I know, that's the relief that we're going to need, and I just kind of wanted to get that out there so that the board has an idea of other than the use, what relief this site requires, and these are all existing conditions.
Mr. Chair, if I could just chime in real quick. So I take no exception to the the applicant's request to defer the easements to the condition of approval. The big one is a conservation easement that's going to be required per their TAW permit with DEP. Obviously, that's got to get approved before that can get filed and everything. So I have no issue with that. They are proposing that new site driveway location on Route 33. I just asked that the applicant provide a site triangle easement for that, and that can be a condition of the approval. Throughout the site, they've got the circulation aisle and there's a parking. They're not proposing any lighting throughout the site. Walt, can you touch on that? The applicant's operation hours and why they don't feel they need lighting throughout the site other than the public area on Route 34?
Honestly, Charles, Mr. Cunliffe, if we could touch on that in the next at our next meeting, might be better. So I might be able to bring some more clarity into that.
Okay.
I understand your concern, and I just want to make
I
sure
just
that
want to get whatever we can out of the way here before, with the little time that we have left.
Yep, I understand it's a concern, and I want to get clarity to that before we testify to it any further.
And then that miscellaneous equipment storage and parking area at the right-hand corner of the page there. What kind of equipment and things is the applicant anticipating? Or
We just kind of left that as an area that was available. We honestly don't have any plans for it. If the board needed to get something specific, we can come back with that at the next meeting.
So it's not going to be the trailers or the roll-offs stacked 3 high, right? It's just going to be equipment associated with the operation on the site.
Correct, and it would be, as you can see, it's delineated all outside of the buffer.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure, we're not stacking 3 high. We are proposing the buffer on 33 there, but it's, 2 or 3 feet with plantings. Once you go 3 high with trailer or with roll-offs, doesn't necessarily screen it. So
yeah, we have this garage here, and there will be vehicles in and out of here, and we just didn't, we want this to be a blueprint for any enforcement. So if somebody comes out here and sees a couple of trucks in this area that are being serviced, we don't want to say, hey, that wasn't an area where there's supposed to be any vehicles.
Okay, that's all I have right now, Mr. Chair.
Jen?
No, I mean, I addressed the issues that I wanted Walter to touch on. I appreciate the fact that they have finally moved everything that can physically be moved out of the buffer. I understand the parking is existing and that building is existing, but everything else, and I want to say on the record, there was a lot of stuff in that buffer along 34, a lot of stuff, which
Well,
they
even
moved
now,
out a lot.
It looks a lot better now,
Yes,
driving through there.
and then
Looks very
when I
nice.
saw the latest plans that had the basin in the buffer, I was like, are you kidding me? But they've committed to moving that out of the buffer as well. And they're going to work with Shari along 33 to make sure that that looks great and is burned and adequately landscaped. And Shari, she's not going to let them get away with doing something that's not going to work out. So I think from that standpoint, we've come a tremendous way. I know it's taken a while to get here, but I do think that we're on the right path, and we're finally in a place where we can get through to traffic and other things aside from drainage and the buffer, which has taken us a while. So, Walt, thank you very much for the work that you've done. And I think that we're on the right track, and I really, you've addressed it, but I do want you to, between now and whenever you come back, let's talk about the fencing, because I would be an advocate for a higher, more solid fence along those frontages than we would normally allow, right? Because typically along the front yard, it's 4 foot, 50% open. Wendell, we talked about something like 8 feet, especially along 33, behind the berm, solid, for your security. So we, you guys should talk about it, and then maybe you should reach out and we should talk about what you're looking at, because I would like to see something a little bit nicer than the chain link, but I think we can work together to give you something that's going to provide more security. So I think we can get to that point. That's something you guys should work out before you come back. But other than that, I think Walt touched on everything that I had for him.
Okay, Matt, could you bring up the board? Thank you. Mr. Mertens, do you have any comments or questions real quick?
At this time, thank you.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, I do. I really want to see an 8-foot fence, around the whole place, a solid one. Years ago, the whole barrier there had all trees. So when you rode by, you didn't even know what was in there because you couldn't see through the trees. Now, there aren't any trees left, and you can see through there. So it's a distraction while you're driving by. And for aesthetic looks, there should be an 8-foot solid fence. I'm not going to say what color, it doesn't matter. And also, is there 2 or 3 driveways? When I come down 34, and and then swing around and go down 33, I count 3. One by the main office, then there's another gate opening, and then another one towards the far west of the property. So I need to know if one of those gates is going to be eliminated. And I have a concern about if they're going to turn in there, or they're going to be allowed to make a left turn into where one of those gates are. Because if they're coming down 33 headed east and they make a left turn into the yard, that's where all the accidents used to happen. And, I don't have a problem with the one that's further down, but where they come up underneath the bridge and then they boot it as they come around the turn, if somebody's making a left-hand turn, El Crasho. So
That's the one we're eliminating, Mr. O'Donnell.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you'll just end up with 2 then.
Correct.
Correct.
One on the northern part of 34 and one on the western part of 33.
Well, that's excellent because that eliminates a big problem. Okay, that's all I have.
Hey, Mr. Cantor,
No questions.
Mr. Saya.
Sir, I don't have any questions, but I'll make a comment. I drove past this site every day for 10 years, and I agree with what Jen's saying and Mr. O'Donnell. It became an eyesore after a while when you're driving at that high speed, coming down and around the turn, and always seeing those containers that were just sitting out there, always wondering what was going on. So a little obscurity, a little more protection is probably a good thing in helping improve the site overall, though.
Sir, Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, I'd like to also echo about the, trying to get as much stuff out of the buffer. I think it's been a big improvement, and I agree with Jen and Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Saya about the, considering some kind of other fencing would be outstanding. Just a thought. Other than that, I'm good to go.
Okay, Mr. Moretti.
No, I'm good to go. Basically what everybody else has said about the fencing, and also I think there was trucks they used to have out there for sale at one time, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong, but about that. But the fencing would be an excellent idea.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez.
I'm good to go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do we have another date set forward?
I have December 14th, which has 2 applications on it, but we could put them first before those.
What are the 2 applications?
One is a single family residence in the SED zone.
Okay.
They're doing an addition? Aziz, Rafkin? They're doing an addition to a house in the SED zone. And the other one is Howell Plaza, where White Castle is. They want to change something on the 2nd floor, so it's just a minor change.
Okay, yeah, that's up to Sakotas. Are y'all available on the 14th?
Mr. Chairman, I know my civil engineer is the 30th booked? I guess that's in a week.
That's in a week, and our agenda's already been posted.
Oh.
That's why I didn't suggest that one.
Okay.
And the 7th has 3 applications on, and the 14th only has 2.
So my applicant's available, my civil engineer, I believe Ms. Cafone's also available. And Anthony, does that work for you also?
Yes, that works for me.
And Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that we may be scheduled first. If that's the case, we would my client would very much appreciate it.
Okay, I'm gonna go to my professionals and also your professionals also. Do y'all have kind of a time frame that we could move through this?
I don't see any impediment to going on the 14th. Michael, do you? I mean, it's your application.
No, I think
there's like a couple conversations that you need to have about the fencing. But like, other than that, I don't really see any impediment to moving forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of the testimony that we have left is important testimony, but it's more in the nature of information that we need to give you. And I don't think it relates as much to the debate and the issues and the back and forth that we've had so far.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add, I had some comments regarding Mr. Ray's traffic impact statement. If responses and additional information can be provided in advance of the meeting, maybe that might head off, any necessary testimony or shorten the testimony at the next hearing. That might.
I can do that, Mr. Cunliffe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vitiello, I do need an extension of time as well, please.
Sure. It was 12:14. You want it to the 15th?
Or the end of the month.
But to the end of the year.
To the end of the month. So yes, the applicant would consent to the extension of time within which the board has to act to December 31st, 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, well, case number BA 1831, Scuda Realty LLC will be carried to December 14th with no further notice, and it's 7 p.m. at that time.
Via the same electronic format, correct?
Yeah. It'll be the same exact one.
Great.
And I appreciate y'all moving forward with this.
Thank you for your patience. We appreciate your patience on this.
Okay.
I do have to say, Mr. Chair, before we go, I do appreciate, I know it's been a long road to get here.
Yeah.
And it's been sometimes a battle, sometimes not, but I do think that we're like definitely on the right track, honestly. It's taken a long way. It's taken a lot of work to get to this point, but I do think we're like really on the right path.
I totally agree. Okay, is there any further business of the board? We have a meeting next week at 7
Oh my
p.m.
gosh.
We have
It's
a
like
meeting.
every week we're together. I mean, I love you guys, but like, Jesus Christ.
I was gonna say, we would miss you, Jen, if you weren't around.
I know. Like, oh my God.
We are getting through some applications though.
We are, I know, but I'm like, geez Louise, next week is not
Got
gonna
to
be
figure out how to put cookies into this deal.
we need some kind of like incentive.
Yeah.
Some of Eileen's cakes.
Yeah.
Holidays are coming.
Well, we can get together. I'll bake a cake.
We need some
Well,
rum
it's
balls.
almost
Rum
like
balls.
it was last year,
We need some rum balls to get through this.
Yeah, Eileen, send us some of them bad boys.
Okay, if there's no other further business of the board, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Mr. Hughes,
I'll second that.
seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Good night, everybody.
All right,
Good
have
night.
a good holiday, everybody. Bye.
Everyone.
Have a good Thanksgiving, guys.
Yes.
You also.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your families.
Yes, sir.